This show is part of the RetroZap.com podcast network.
All right, are we ready?
We are ready.
And
here we go.
This is what you can look forward to on episode 146, our countdown to Rogue One of Skywalking Through Neverland. Away to the computer, Mon Mothma to her phone. Rogue One ticks to buy, but we were not alone.
I know for a fact I'm going to get at least one or two of those chill-inducing moments in Rogue One just because Michael Giacchino is there.
Oh, cyber high five.
Yeah, I was born 12 years after that.
Oh.
I'm telling you right now, that is one of the 10 greatest podcast moments in my life.
Is that just way too much pressure for one film?
This is brand new. We just locked it down today. We are going to be shooting for a world record.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls.
Hello, Skywalkers.
Listen.
Neverland.
I only hope that we never lose sight of one thing, that it was all started by a mouse.
Wow. Oh, what?
You are skywalking through Neverland.
Hey, Skywalkers! Welcome to Skywalking Through Neverland. If this is the first time you are joining our family, just like Mark on Periscope, one of our new Scope Walkers, we are the fun-filled and family-friendly Star Wars and Disney podcast that bring you entertaining stories from the creators and fans. And a big thanks and a giant Wookiee hug to our family of Skywalkers who listen to the show every week, post on our Facebook group, and share the positivity about our adventure through fandom. I am Richard Wolosky, your tour guide through fandom, and now it is cold out there, but it is hot in here because I'm with my sweetie wife, Sarah.
When did you think of that one?
It just came to me right now.
Just now?
It's just really cold outside, so...
Baby, it's cold outside.
I can't pre-think them. They've got to just come to me.
That's awesome. Well, I'm in here too, so I'm all toasty warm with my sweetie, and I am very excited to be talking with our Scope Walkers and all of our Skywalkers who are listening. And I want to say hello to our Star Wars and Disney family, because if you listen to this show, you really are part of the Skywalker family. So you can call yourself a Skywalker, and we want to thank you so much for supporting this show throughout all of social media. We love it when you tweet at us while you're listening, and that is at SkywalkingPod. And also posting your Skywalker selfie, which we've been doing lately. So people have been taking a selfie of themselves as they're listening, whatever they happen to be doing. And then you post it on social media with the hashtag Skywalker selfie.
And we are double dipping today when it comes to social media because we're on Periscope and get our Scope Walkers. And now we're on Facebook Live.
We figured out we could do both at once.
Yeah, but now did we figure out what we're calling the Facebook Live
Face
watchers?
Walkers.
Face Walkers. Okay, Face Walkers. But now, what if we turn that camera around so the Facebook Live is watching the
Facebook
Periscope
Live.
Walkers?
Whoa.
There's a Doctor Strange reference in there somewhere.
Okay.
It's like the social media of Agamotto.
Jeremy Hunt. Now I gotta put this back again.
All right. Skybookers.
Skybookers. All
right, we got a big show, so we got to get to it. Okay. Now, we are recording from Long Beach, California on November 29th, 2016. And now we need to check in for the time. The time is...
It's 10:47.
She already said good morning earlier.
All right, now, coming up on today's show, we're going to be talking with former Full of Sith co-host Bobby Roberts and former RebelForce Radio social media manager Tyler Westhause about the current state of Star Wars podcasting. Now, both are making their Skywalking Through Neverland debuts, and on this episode, there couldn't be a better time for them to both make their debuts because there's been some recent shakeups, which we want to get to the bottom of and really see what's going on in this outlaw medium that's still in its infancy.
It really is. It's in the Wild West, you know? So there you go.
So we're going to talk all about that and break it down.
And we also are going to get into a little bit of Rogue One with them as well. So, it's countdown to Rogue One, you guys. It's almost here.
Yeah. We also have Ric Peralta from liningup.net coming up with some late breaking news about some meetups and other fun stuff going on down at the, I got it, TCL Chinese IMAX.
Almost! Oh. You had the first two right.
All right.
IMAX 3D?
You guys know what I'm talking
TCL
about.
Chinese Theater IMAX.
Yes.
I believe that's it, right?
Yeah, so fun things happening down there starting now. Well, you know what? Listen to the show later on so Rick can tell you all the good news. And we have shout-outs, a Skywalker of the Week, and things one of our Skywalkers wanted to share.
Things we want to share. Things we want to share. Things we want to share. Things we want to share.
In our first stages of the countdown to Rogue One, we got a special poem by Skywalker Michael Talon in our Facebook group, where he put his thoughts and feelings down about the night before Rogue One tickets went on sale just last Sunday.
And it goes something like this. 'Twas the night before Rogue One ticks, and all through the crib, not a creature was stirring, not even a who jib.
Debit cards were placed by the computer with care in hopes for these tickets so fair.
The Skywalkers were nestled all snug in their beds, while visions of the Death Star danced through their heads.
Mon Mothma in her robe, and I in my cap, we set our alarm for a 2-hour nap.
The R2 rang out with a bop and a beep. We sprang from our bed. Rogue One ticks. What a treat!
Away to the computer, Mon Mothma to her phone. Rogue One ticks to buy, but we were not alone.
The net ran slow. Skywalkers were teaming, all to get our ticks for the first night's screening.
Yay! What an amazing poem! That is so cool. So thank you so much, Michael Talon. He must have been waiting for those tickets to go on sale and just needed to do some creativity.
And that he did. That was a great poem. Thank you, Michael. And if anyone else has got a Rogue One themed poem they want to send in, by all means, because from now until the screening, and even after, it's nothing but the countdown to Rogue One and round tables of discussions about Rogue One.
Okay. Well, welcome. We have some new Skywalkers. Kenny Craley's joined us. Ooh, Ryan Sims just shared our video on Facebook. How fun.
Tiki, 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 cantina. In the tiki, 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 cantina. In the tiki, 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 cantina. The Woloski's talk and the magic blue. In the tiki, 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 cantina. Tiki, 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 cantina.
Whether we're at a celebration convention, gathering to see a Star Wars film for the first time, or just talking with friends about our favorite topic in a fan community, it seems like it's easy to get along with each other. Then why does everything suddenly need to change in a podcast, a blog, or in social media?
Here to talk about the state of Star Wars podcasting is Bobby Roberts, former co-host on Full of Sith, but he can now be heard throughout the Star Wars fan community, giving his thoughts and opinions, and now he's making his Skywalking Through Neverland debut.
Hey, Bobby!
Yay! I'm doing the Kermit flail.
I can tell!
I'm really happy to be on the show, you guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I want to thank you guys for putting on one of the best examples of a positive podcast, sort of presenting one of the best examples of community outreach in the vast empire that is the Star Wars fan community, including podcasts. So thank you for having me be a part of that for just tonight, and thank you for trusting me enough not to make that bad.
Where do we go from here?
I don't know. Well, we do have to bring on another player in this discussion. And also making his debut on Skywalking Through Neverland is Tyler Westhause. And he has just started up the popular Star Wars Podcast Alliance group page on Facebook that just hit its 3,000th member. And he is also a contributor on StarWars.com.
Hey, Tyler.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. I echo what Bobby said. You are the two most positive people I've heard in my entire life. So I'm excited to be talking to you guys. It's very welcoming.
Why didn't we have them on sooner?
I don't know.
2016 hasn't been the best year for a lot of people, and being able to talk to two very, very kind people like you guys makes it better.
Oh.
Well, let's segue into our first topic, which is the state of Star Wars podcasting, and you two have got a lot of podcasting and social media experience behind you. So let's talk about the positive experiences it's had on you personally, as well as a positive experience from others because of what you've done. Bobby, let's start with you.
It's all about the experience of sharing, I think, and it's always felt that way to me. I've been in broadcasting and podcasting for over 10 years now. I sort of unofficially retired last year when The Force Awakens came out. Full of Sith was the anchor leg on my relay race through broadcasting that I started back in 2005. And so once I crossed the finish line there, I sort of left the baton with them and wandered off into semi-podcast retirement. I became a Force ghost, essentially. But the thing is, I sort of keep Force ghosting up on other people's podcasts as they ask me, because those people want to share their love of Star Wars and their insight into it and their outlook onto it with everyone, and they want me to come on and help them sometimes, and I love being a part of that. And that's always been what sort of spoke to me the most about the fan community in Star Wars, is the need to share. A lot of people get into podcasting for just that very reason. Like, some people get into it because they think they're going to get audiences up in the 5 to 6 digits. They think that advertisers are going to come along with that, and that's all well and good. And a lot of people actually build shows that are worthy of that much attention. But I feel like you have to want to get into this solely for the sake of you wanting to express yourself, and you knowing that if you didn't do it this way, you wouldn't be doing it. It would just sort of swell within you and burst, and something inside you might pop if you weren't sharing yourself with people. So it's partially that, and partially the idea that you're helping other people. Even if you're just sharing your own point of view, the odds are that there's going to be someone out there who has that same point of view, who hasn't heard someone else share it, and is going to latch on, is going to be appreciative that you not only were brave enough to share that point of view with anybody who might be strolling by, because that's honestly a brave act. It doesn't seem that way in the face of everyone having a Twitter and a Facebook and a comment section, but really putting yourself out there, putting your name on it, standing behind what you say is a bit of a brave act. And people really appreciate that because they can see that you are speaking for them. So it's that little yin yang that I think is what's really the most helpful about the Star Wars community. It's, getting things off your chest, being able to share, feeling safe in that ability to share, and knowing that you are helping someone else out by providing them, the knowledge that they aren't alone, that they have people out there who are like them, that they can hang out with, that they can talk with, even disagree with, that they're safe to disagree with them in a rewarding way, that maybe they can learn, maybe they can find new avenues in this fandom that they hadn't even considered before. So I think that for me is the best part of this community, and why I keep hanging around, even though I'm supposed to be doing puzzles on the kitchen table and actually paying attention to my work. I should be doing all that stuff, but I keep coming back to the community because that sense of sharing and camaraderie and helpfulness keeps pulling me back. That's why I end up like Michael Corleone in Godfather 3. They keep pulling me back in.
I get this visual of Bobby sitting on his front porch with a shawl over his knees, just waving at traffic. It's like, no, there's never any kind of retirement in this community, because there's always something else happening.
Yes.
Now, has something ever happened personally to you that affected you in a very positive way? Did someone say like, hey, it was because of you that I did this, or I'm so glad you said this, now my whole world has opened? Has something like that ever happened?
I guess the most directly positive effect that Star Wars has had on my life is the fact that I did end up in broadcasting. A lot of how I wound up in radio is directly tied to my being a Star Wars fan. Wow. And it's I mean, I can look back on my past, look back at my early online activity, and regret a whole lot of it because I was not the nicest person back then. I was young. I was a little mean-spirited at times. It was the Wild West, and people got rewarded for just being sort of bilious and pointed and rude. And there are a lot of people who still have jobs in the media who sort of came up in that atmosphere and learned some of the worst lessons from that era. And so I look back at that and I realize that I probably closed some doors that could have stayed open with my behavior. I probably shot myself in the foot by saying the wrong thing around the wrong person in an attempt to get some easy, cheap victories online in a message board thread or something like that. But I also look back and realize that that there were friends that I made, and the passion and the love that was there for Star Wars really did fuel me in a way to sort of keep reaching out and building communities and interacting with those communities. And it was because of the strength of the communities that I was in. And some of them I actually burnt down too, but mostly the ones that remained standing. Because of the strength of those, I was given the confidence to sort of like, well, if I can communicate with these people and enjoy this interaction, and feel like I'm actually building something or helping build something, helping be a part of something that is bigger than me, then maybe I can take that into other avenues. And that is precisely what happened because of, essentially the training in dealing with those Wild West internet days. It helped me build up enough calluses to realize what mistakes I need to avoid and to develop a real voice that I ended up putting to very good use when I finally did break into radio. So I would say that like a lot of people in the creative industry, especially now and for like the last 10, 15 years, Star Wars was a very, very big influence. I didn't end up making movies. I wanted to. I didn't end up writing screenplays. I wanted to. But it's absolutely undeniable that the creative energies that have always been within me and have gotten to be expanded upon were inspired in me first and foremost by Star Wars and by discussing it with like-minded individuals who kept turning me on to new things and new avenues and new expressions in that creative mode.
All right. Now, Tyler, you got a big step ahead of us because you're in your 20s and you can learn from all of our mistakes because I've done pretty much a lot of what Bobby had said and saying the wrong thing at the right time, the right thing at the wrong time, and having doors slammed on your face
those bridges
because you're too cocky. So, Tyler, get a pen and paper.
I think I'm at that point in my life, honestly.
Oh.
I'm not just in my 20s. I am 20.
Okay.
So
I love that.
I'm very early on in my journey in the Star Wars podcasting community, but I've still had a lot of experiences, I think, similar to both of you guys when it comes to affecting possible career stuff as well. Like Bobby mentioned, by getting into radio, I'm not really much of a writer, and I don't think I'm a good writer, but I'm still contributing to StarWars.com, and that's solely because of my work with RebelForce Radio and them getting me involved in the Star Wars podcasting community. And going back to your first question to Bobby, the biggest thing that I like about the community is really just the sense of community. In high school, when I would go to church groups and I would go participate in sports teams, the community and familial aspect of everything was very welcoming. Knowing that you have people that you can talk about really nerdy stuff with, and knowing that they will not judge you, they will 100% be there with you. They might judge you if you tell them Watto is your favorite Star Wars character.
The boys
but in that case, I think it's deserved. But there's just a ton of positivity in the community at large. Of course, there's going to be a few bad apples in the community, some people who might not be as positive or people who might not want to do crossovers or reach out to other shows. But I've gotten to meet dozens of people that I would otherwise not know. Like, I met Bobby through the Star Wars podcasting community. I met you guys, Richard and Sarah. I met people like Brian Young, Dan Zare, Jimmy Mack and Jason from RebelForce Radio, Justin Bolger at Lucasfilm, Dan Brooks at Lucasfilm. Just, there are so many people that I know and I'm friends with in real life now, thanks to the community. And that's been a running trend for my life of 20 years. Prior to Star Wars, I was really into the gaming community. And there was a podcast I like to listen to, and I still do. It was called The Comedy Button. And I suggest, if you're interested in family-friendly programming, do not listen to that, because it's not family-friendly in the slightest. It's the exact opposite. But I joined that community when I was 13. I've been in it for 7 years now, and I know plenty of people that I consider like some of my best friends in real life thanks to that community. I've gone to 2 people in that community that I've met. I've gone to their actual weddings.
Oh, wow.
One of them I'm talking to is actually considering me to be their best man. And when I got that text from them, I said, "Are you serious? Really? Do you remember how obnoxious I was when I was 14? And it struck me, I knew this person when I was 14. I met people in the Star Wars Podcast Alliance Facebook group, which used to be the RebelForce Radio Facebook group until we had a bit of a change in there. I met people in there who at first sort of just hesitantly tried to reach out to me and say, "Hey, Tyler, I heard you on RebelForce Radio. Just wanted to say I appreciate your input." And the fact that somebody would reach out to me and just even say, "Hey, I liked your input," that means the world. It's an extremely gratifying thing to hear that somebody appreciates the work you're doing, even if it's behind the scenes type of stuff. It's just positivity really echoes throughout the entire Star Wars fandom, not just the podcasting community as well. And I think that's something that people really need to cling on to, is that positivity. You can't get bogged down by selfishness or negativity or cynicism. Otherwise, you're just not doing it right. You're not having a great time with it. Mm-hmm. The most fun I've had with Star Wars podcasting is when I'm goofing off and laughing about crazy Star Wars stuff, not when I'm arguing and thinking, "Oh, does this podcast think they're better than me?" Well, if they do, who cares? It doesn't matter, because Star Wars is awesome and we don't need to fight about it.
Well, I know you've been scrutinized a lot lately on the Star Wars Podcast Alliance group and how you got to that group, and I'm so glad that you stayed with it and changed it into this new page that everyone from all over the place can now congregate on and talk with each other. I think you did such an amazing accomplishment there. So, highest kudos to you for doing that and for staying with it. Because once again, I know people have been saying some very negative things about you, unjustifiably.
Oh, even that is fine. I mean, honestly, that's another thing that I think is good about the community and just the internet in general, is that if somebody wants to give me constructive criticism or call me a mean name or say that I'm just the worst person, I think it's good that people have the opportunity to do that, as long as they're not just being terrible. I mean, for context, for your listeners who might not know.
Right.
The Star Wars Podcast Alliance Facebook group was the RebelForce Radio Facebook group. It was a Facebook group that was dedicated solely to RebelForce Radio. People involved with the podcast group who didn't really want cross-promotion with other shows, and they didn't really want other people saying, like, for instance, if Bobby had a show called the, I don't know, Bobby Minute or something, where he just talked about himself.
I like that you said minute, as if that was remotely possible.
It's like, it's broken up into minutes, and it's a multi-thousand-hour part series.
There we go.
It's just as an aside, Bobby mentioned how he needs to pay more attention to his work. I don't know if Bobby actually has a job, because when I check the Facebook group, I see Bobby, and I'm just like, Bobby's writing a comment, and then Bobby writes like a paragraph that could go in a book. I'm just like, geez, Bobby is just going off. He's not going to keep his job if he even has it.
I write really, really fast, and it's actually at a newspaper, so being verbose is not necessarily a bad thing.
No, it's a good thing. It's better than just writing K and nothing else.
Yes.
It's
almost like an insult.
I want to piggyback on what Tyler is saying, though, with regards to constructive criticism within the community, because I don't want the impression to be that everyone here is advocating for some sort of REM-like shiny, happy people holding hands existence. I'm
not that person, for reference. I'm not that person at all. I just like that part.
part of a healthy community, in any community, is knowing that ideas can be safely challenged. Now, sometimes things are going to get heated. That's going to happen. Everyone on this podcast, and I'm fairly safe in saying everyone that is listening, has gotten into an argument online about Star Wars at some point or another. And while that argument might have gone sour, maybe that argument got a little personal. Maybe you had to push back from your computer and let loose a couple of swears under your breath, or maybe much louder than under your breath.
In the response.
Yeah, like you got to recognize that almost all of those arguments have come from the same source, which is an underlying passion for the thing that we are all interested in. No matter how vastly we may differ on any specific opinion regarding Star Wars, you trace that disagreement back far enough and you're going to come to the same common ground that we're all standing on, which is that we actually love some part of this enough to want to call ourselves a fan. And the question becomes more on how do you best share that, even those disagreements? How do you best share those disagreements while still making sure that everyone involved is standing on that common ground? How do you educate? How do you let yourself be educated? How do you enter into those discussions with an open mind? How do you keep that mind open even though the result that you want might not be the result that is coming? Like, these are the sorts of lessons that can come into any applicable form of communication that you get from Star Wars without even realizing that you're learning them. Like, that to me is one of the best examples of the community helping people not just, gain a deeper appreciation for Star Wars, but just gain a deeper appreciation for community itself. And that's always why when I used to be at Full of Sith, I would push really hard for the crossovers like Tyler was talking about. I always thought, especially since I was coming from radio, that one of the beauties of podcasting is that it is intrinsically different from radio. Radio is built on a sense of competition first and foremost, because there's only so many listeners, there's only so many time slots, there's only so many commercials, and so you have to head into that creative process with a completely different focus, which is how do I get mine and how do I stop mine from going somewhere else so that I can't lose money? And that is how a lot of radio is made and built. If you take that mindset into podcasting, what you end up sort of defeating the purpose of being a podcast, because podcasts are everything that radio can't be. It's not just, I can curse now because there's no ratings board.
Yay.
I can do a 5-hour show because I don't have to worry about, dropping in a song or hitting commercial breaks. Like, you can do those things. There's vast amounts of freedom, but you don't want to just do them just for the sake of doing them. And you don't want to take that radio attitude into podcasting, because there are no time slots. There are no ratings. There are no ads that you have to compete with other people. Otherwise, you're not going to get that ad. That's not how it works. How it works is that you find a slot in a community that someone might not be servicing specifically, and then you serve that slot. And you serve it because it's a thing that you would want to listen to.
Right.
Make it. So you just make it. That's what. And there's so many people in the Star Wars community, so many shows that are touching different aspects. Skywalking Through Neverland is not doing the same thing that Star Wars Report is doing, which is not doing the same thing that Tashi Station is doing, which is not doing the same thing that Coffee with Kenobi is doing, not doing the same thing that Lattes with Leia, even though it has a very similar name, or Fangirls Going Rogue, so on and so forth, Brews and Blasters, the list goes on and on and on and on. And all those shows are doing something slightly different and touching a different segment of the audience. And I always felt that if we could get those shows to sort of work together and bounce off each other and share their audiences with each other, the rising tide is going to lift all boats. You're going to end up with a stronger community, because the fact there is no real competition. It's not it's not a situation in which one podcast gets to climb the mountain and then Lucasfilm gets to draft them as like the official podcast of the entire community, and they get to reap the rewards, and George Lucas himself will flutter down on fairy wings and bop you on the nose with a sash and say, "You are the best of all Star Wars shows. Congratulations." It's not that sort of deal. The deal is that we are all trying to make enjoying Star Wars, loving Star Wars, and playing in this sandbox as fun as it possibly can be. And trying to cut each other's kneecaps off in that effort isn't the greatest way to go about doing that.
It's the worst way to go about doing that. I mean, it's really, really unfortunate that there are some people in the community who would just view everybody as competition.
Right.
Like you said with radio. Radio is just, it's cutthroat. Everybody in radio, since Howard Stern came into prominence, wants to be Howard Stern. And I think by bashing their competition, they're going to be at the top because Stern is bigger than anybody. There's no podcast equivalent of Howard Stern. There's a podcast equivalent of the podcast equivalent. It's completely unique. And to go in with a mentality like, I'm going to be the best, is just going to set yourself up for failure.
Oh, here. Definitely so.
After you.
But you know what? I'd like to go back to what you were saying, Tyler, about how the Star Wars Podcast Alliance group started and then bounce and build onto what Bobby was just saying. So let's go back to how.
Sorry about that.
Yeah, you were right in the middle of the story about how the Podcast Alliance group started. So let's finish up with that thought.
Yeah, it was like I said, it was the RebelForce Radio Facebook group. I had been with RebelForce Radio for just about 2 years. I think it was a year and 11 months, actually. And I had been thinking about leaving for a while, and I was planning on leaving on a certain day. And there were some disagreements about how the group should be handled. And it was basically given to me to say, it was basically something that myself, Jimmy, and Jason all talked about, and they decided the group just isn't something that we're interested in. And their reasons for doing that are their own. I can't speak for them. But I was planning on leaving that week anyway. So I was planning on leaving that week and leaving the group just to let it continue to grow, because at that point we were about 2,700 people deep when it comes to the size of the group, which is pretty sizable for a Facebook group. Mm-hmm. And when it's active, that's another thing that I was really impressed with. Everything was going great in the group, but I was prepared to leave it behind and maybe start something else and move on. So I had this group and I had it sitting in my lap, and I realized I need to change it somehow. What can I do that would be best for the community? So I literally just made the group for the community. I changed the name to the Star Wars Podcasting Community Group. And after multiple people said, well, that's a mouthful and it's a dumb name, I'm just like, okay, let's do a poll. And Star Wars Podcast Alliance won the poll because I wanted the community to decide this is a group for you guys. I want you to decide what we should talk about. And I want you to decide what it should be called. It overwhelmingly won in the poll. So we renamed it. We have an awesome admin team right now when we're all talking about certain days, like certain events that we can do. Starting this coming week, I believe, Monday, we're going to start making a creator sharing post. It's going to be starting. We're going to call it Thank the Maker Mondays.
Ah, nice.
For all the podcast makers out there, where they can come in, they can say, this is this week's show. We talk about this, this, and this. And hopefully it can be a place for Star Wars fans to come and like hear about new podcasts they might not have heard about. If somebody hasn't heard of Skywalking Through Neverland, Richard might drop in and say, hey, check out our show if you like positivity. If Riley Bland wants to come in and talk about the Star Wars Report and the way he does his show, which I think is great, he can come in and do that just so that people can get to know other people in the community and so that community can grow even further.
Is that going to be one post that we're posting on, or will it be?
Yeah, it's going to be one post. It's going to be pinned at the top of the page. So if anybody listening has a Star Wars podcast, and if you feel bummed or if you just started and you think I only have 10 listeners, it's not worth sharing. That's not the case at all. Please come share your podcast with 10 listeners. Mm-hmm. Every great Star Wars podcast started off with 10 listeners or one listener, and somebody had to click and go like, what's a Star Wars podcast? Oh, okay, I guess I'll download it. And then they probably became a dedicated fan. Great shows do not start with thousands of listeners. I'm in the process, here's a behind the scenes snippet. I'm in the process of planning my own show that I'm planning on launching within maybe by the end of 2016.
Right on.
I don't expect anybody to listen except for like my mother. When I mention, hey, I made a Star Wars podcast, you're like, oh, I'll download it. And then she never presses play on the iTunes. It just shows the download number. And even that I'll be happy with. You don't need to be a big show to come in and join in the group, and you don't need to have a show to be in the group. It's a place where you can come in, talk to other Star Wars fans about anything Star Wars, and then you'll see people who have their own Star Wars podcast jumping in and having great conversations. Bobby is pretty much on every single post. Bobby is, I think, one of our most loyal members of the group, and I appreciate it greatly for that. Brian Young from Full of Sith is in there a lot. Amy Ratcliffe from Full of Sith is in there a lot. Dan Zare. Occasionally we have some people from Lucasfilm drop in.
I got to admit, I had learned about a couple of new Star Wars podcasts because of this group. I thought I had heard of them all. And when you had posted that initial post about podcasters and all becoming one and being united, everyone was throwing in their 2 cents in their podcast. And wow.
That was kind of controversial.
Yeah.
That was cool.
Yeah, I thought it was great too because I had subscribed. I had subscribed to a whole bunch of new ones because of your post. So congratulations on expanding everyone's audience.
Yeah, that was the goal. I want to expand people's
and you
horizons.
did.
I don't want to limit it. And that was something when you and I both mentioned that the change was kind of controversial. I got a lot of hate. A lot of people didn't really understand how that process to move from the RebelForce Radio group to the Star Wars Podcasting Alliance group worked. They think there was a lot of like backroom dealing and that I stole it, and that's just not the case.
No.
It was a lot of people who would say, well, I only like RebelForce Radio, so I don't want to be in this group. And I'm not mad at those people. I don't hate those people. Somebody said in a comment, I don't want to be in this group anymore. I was here for Jason and Jimmy. Tyler, I don't really like you that much. I know you hate me, but I apologize. And I commented, and by that time, he'd already left the group. So I reached out via private message and was like, hey, I don't hate you, dude. I don't hate you. I'd love to have you back in the group whenever you want. I got a lot of like really, really awful messages. I got 2 legitimate, maybe not legitimate. It's the internet. Let's be real. I got 2 threats on my life thanks to me changing the group.
Crazy.
And even then I responded to those people and I tried to be just nice and respectful. Just like, hey, hope you're not serious. I hope you're back in the group at some point. We liked having you in there.
And I hope you don't live in my neighborhood.
Even if you did just threaten me.
I love the fact that you really have single-handedly, I would say, brought all of these podcasters together, and for that, once again, highest kudos to you. But now to really build on all of us being united and sharing shows as content creators, should there be an unwritten law about what should or should not be done? Bobby, what do you think about that?
I don't go in too much for unwritten laws ever. Like here's my idea, and it's a very democratic sort of idea as to podcasting communities, fan communities, entertainment enthusiast communities in general, because I've been involved with them for a very long time. Like I said, I sort of crawled out of the primordial ooze of the enthusiast press that was like 1997, 1998. And I made a whole bunch of mistakes. A whole lot of other people made a ton of mistakes. And everyone sort of in hindsight looked back and learned at, you probably shouldn't be doing this. This is a thing that was actually pretty good. Let's take this idea. And I've always felt that part of what makes, the rising tide lift all boats is not only that sort of that sharing, that camaraderie, that knowing that people aren't really competing with one another. They're just trying to do their best to get their voice out there. And if it resonates, it resonates. And that's all to the good. It's sort of like when you look at here's another podcasting community that basically made podcasting what it is. The comedians, the stand-up comics. When they first came to podcasting had already been going for quite a while, but it was typically a bunch of people who sort of were like, I want to do a talk show. I've never had the opportunity to do a talk show before, and I've never had the inroads radio, so I'm just going to start a talk show. So if you looked at iTunes back in like 2005, 2006, it was a ton of people in the comedy section who were just basically, doing their own radio talk show. They weren't known, they weren't names, but they were putting together legitimately interesting talk radio. The Mediocre Show in Philadelphia, Yeah Dude, which is still actually going on strong. Both of them actually still are. Keith and the Girl, those sorts of shows were, they weren't comedians, they weren't stand-ups, they weren't known personalities, but they were just getting out there and doing their thing. The comedians discovered podcasting, on the strength of these guys actually showing that it was a valid medium, and they swooped in. And the comedians didn't start immediately trying to Heisman faceplant every other comedian that that hit iTunes, what they ended up doing, and I think it's partially just because of, the way that community is, that network is down in Los Angeles, is they just kept having everyone on everyone else's show. Like if you listen to Mark Maron, he would interview a guy, that guy would have his own podcast, that own podcast would have like Todd Glass on, Todd Glass would go and start his own podcast, and Todd Glass would have, Todd Barry on, and Todd Barry, and so on and so forth. And then you end up getting networks like Earwolf, built out of nothing but a whole bunch of comedians that are having every other comedian in the world on, and those comedians are having podcasts, and a huge, vast, like dome of comedy dominance basically got built over iTunes, and podcasts blew up, and people started making television shows out of them. Comedy Bang Bang, Maron got his own show. Television shows are being adapted from podcasts now, and a lot of that is largely due to the fact that the comedians didn't treat podcasting like it was radio. They weren't competing with each other on that level. They weren't trying to pretend that other comedians didn't exist. They weren't.
And the people who did try failed. That's an important thing.
And this is partially why they failed. And this is what's getting to Richard's question. Partially why they failed is because nobody in the community was too afraid to actually call bad actors in the community out. And it's a thing that I keep coming back to. If a show does something that is more or less repugnant, if people in the community post something on a blog that is really wrong and really harmful and hurtful to the community, if you didn't have a show, would you not have tweeted about it? Would you not have posted about it? That's sort of the question I always end up asking myself and asking others. Like, does the fact someone has a show and you have a show, does that necessarily stop you from doing what you would normally do and calling out the bad behavior in your own community? And I don't think that there should be any sort of unwritten rule that says this thing that you would have otherwise normally talked about, if it was anyone else, if it was anyone in any other corner of the fandom doing this nasty thing, you shouldn't be made to quiet yourself for fear of having it negatively splash back on you just because you have a show and this other person has a show, or just because you have a blog and this other person has a blog. Yes, it's going to be guaranteed that someone is going to suggest in a comment or in a tweet that you're only doing it because you're jealous, or you're only doing it because you're looking to make a name off somebody, or that you're only doing it because you want to pull somebody down so you can stand on their shoulders. Someone's always going to be there to lob that spit wad, because that sort of tribalism is just sort of naturally enforced in fandom. That's a part of it. It's a part of it that we have to fight, that we have to control, that we have to manage. But I don't know if it's altogether safe to just take that option off the table, because, like I said earlier, self-correcting is a key part of a healthy community. If you see members of your community consistently treating like 50% of it as lesser than because of their gender, if you consistently see people in your community talking down women, talking down people of color, talking down people who only just became fans a year ago because they didn't put in the work that you've put in over the past 20 or 30, if you are seeing those actors in the community acting that badly, then whether they have a show or not, the healthiest thing is to at least address it. Now, that doesn't mean you have to make everything into a giant bonfire with neon signs over it, firing off bottle rockets and Roman candles to sort of call attention to the fact that you are doing the right thing and pound your chest like King Kong. That can be counterproductive. But I do think that a lot of people in the community have a responsibility too, if they see something very negative, very harmful, to call it out, regardless whether or not they are an established show or an established blog or, just an established voice in the community in general. If they are doing something harmful to that community, it should be addressed.
Now, this is a good place to take a break to soak in our discussion with Bobby Roberts and Tyler Westhause about the state of Star Wars podcasting, to hear from some other great shows.
Jamie, I think I've intercepted and piggybacked our signal onto the Skywalking Through Neverland broadcast.
You're right, Paul. Our listeners have spiked through the roof.
Quick, let's get the word out.
I'm Jamie.
And I'm Paul.
And this is Radio Free Endor, broadcasting from an old AT-AT on the forest moon of Endor.
Every month, we bring you a fantastic story intro, plus news and reviews, and occasional guest interviews that will give you the lighter side of the Force.
Subscribe to our podcast on iTunes at Radio Free Endor. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter at Radio Free Endor for the latest episodes and updates. And remember, Neverland on Alderaan.
Hey everybody, this is Mike, and along with my good buddy Matt, we both host Home One Hangout. Home One Hangout is a bi-weekly Star Wars news and discussion podcast. Every week we'll talk about the latest in the movies, video games, books, basically everything that has something to do with Star Wars. In every episode we have an in-depth discussion or debate about something in Star Wars, something that we've really wanted to talk about, or something that the listeners suggest, because we love it when the listeners get involved. We would be honored if you would join us. You can find us on Podbean, Stitcher, or iTunes, and you can follow us on Twitter at Home One Hangout. You can find our website at homeonehangout.podbean.com. And thank you so much for your support, and may the Force be with you.
And now, back with Tyler Westhause and Bobby Roberts and our need for common sense while podcasting. And I don't think there should be unwritten laws. There should just be common sense.
Yeah.
I have heard a lot of podcasts go on and they don't want to censor themselves, so they'll give something a really harsh review in a very negative way. Instead of saying, I didn't like this and it was beep, 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 beep. And they never say why. They just want to trash something just for the sake of trashing it. And that's kind of what I mean by unwritten laws / common sense.
Oh, so you think they should not do that? They should have a reason.
They should, yeah. Well, they should have a common sense factor that tells them, if I'm going to trash something, I'm not going to just do it in a negative way just to spike controversy. I'm going to do it, and this is my way. Like we just had a guest on to review Moana, and there were some aspects he didn't like, but he had very educated reasons for why he didn't like what he didn't like.
Yeah, like the thing that I think you're trying to get at, and I 100% agree, is just basically think before you speak and think about what it is you're going to say and why you're saying it, and be prepared to explain that. If you're not going to be prepared to explain why you have the feeling you have, then you need to be real careful about how and why you share that feeling. Because if someone is going to question you on it, if you are going to stand up and raise your voice and put your name on something, someone is going to question you on it, and you have to be prepared to back that up. And I think you should. I absolutely, I could come on, and I used to do this on Full of Sith all the time with Brian. And Brian is a guy who loves most aspects of Star Wars, and he can come up with reasons and he can come up with some of the best. Chris Taylor wrote an entire chapter in his book on Star Wars about how Brian Young can successfully argue the point for Jar Jar Binks in a way that even if you disliked him, you can't help but sort of fold your arms and nod like, okay, I see it. I see what you're getting at. I think that's the thing that I want people to focus on most from this conversation, is that you don't win an argument by bending someone to your will, although that's how most of us argue. The argument comes to a successful conclusion when people on both sides of it can admit that they fully 100% understand where the other person is coming from. That understanding is what builds ties in the community, not necessarily blind agreement, not blind devotion, not blind anything. There are people that I am friends with in this community who I couldn't have deeper divisions as to the quality of certain things in Star Wars, but I am friends with them because they are really good at making me understand why they feel that way and why they think the things they think. And that is more valuable than whether or not they just go, I think that's cool. And I go, yeah, bro. And then we high five like that.
Are you making fun of me? Because that's how I talk. And you know that's how I talk. I high five and say, yeah, bro, all the time.
Well, I mean, you're a Cubs fan. You got to do that for about a week.
Hey. Stop.
What? You got to do that for a week straight. I'm happy for you, man. I was one of the first person that congratulated you on Facebook because your Cubbies won, buddy.
Now, this whole Cubs thing, did the Cubs win something?
Oh, stop it. Stop. I really quickly want to bounce off of what you were saying about Brian in particular.
Yeah.
Brian and I got to know each other over the fact that somebody said something negative about him, and I said, I disagree with that completely. I think you're awesome. And he and I sort of like bonded over that. And over time, we started talking more and more about Star Wars. And as everybody knows, Brian loves Jar Jar.
Mm-hmm.
I, who was 3 when he saw Phantom Menace for the first time, have never liked and don't think I will ever like Jar Jar. And Brian and I have had heated conversations at point about Jar Jar, and every single time I come back to him, he's like, this guy is being positive about it, and he's giving good points, and he's not just liking Jar Jar just to say, I like Jar Jar, look at me. And I'm not just saying I dislike Jar Jar, look at me, even though I do that sometimes. If you go into a group or a forum and you say, I think Jar Jar is my favorite character, if somebody calls you an idiot for liking Jar Jar, they're just not doing the right thing. They're not trying to build the community.
Hey, wait,
it should be a common courtesy thing. Like you said, it doesn't need to be an unwritten rule. It should just be like a common courtesy thing to say, I disagree with you, and here's why. I want you to understand why I disagree with you. And that can go beyond Star Wars fandom, honestly. A lot of people in a lot of different fields could do with trying to educate instead of just misinform. Insult.
And here's a really good example of that using Skywalking Through Neverland. Like you just recently did a show where you talked to the guy who directed the Star Wars Holiday Special, which most people absolutely recognize as being one of the single worst things that's ever had Star Wars slapped onto it. Now you didn't
Bobby's feelings on it.
that you did not go into that interview with a negative frame of mind. You didn't go into that interview challenging the guy to explain what went wrong and why it went wrong with your arms folded like, you better show me something. You went in there, you had a wonderful conversation with the guy. It was very enlightening. There were things that were admitted. There were things that people didn't know that got new light shed upon it. And that is a way in which I wish more people, not just in the Star Wars community, but at large, would sort of take these sort of contentious topics and approach them like the way you guys shed new light on the Star Wars Holiday Special, which has been the butt of God knows how many jokes, not just in Star Wars, but in the entertainment world, and shine light on it to make it maybe not quite admirable, but understandable. Like you got a sense of what it was that guy was trying to do. And it ended up being, as almost everything is when you guys talk about it, a sort of positive example of people pursuing their passions and making something out of what they love and loving what they do while they're doing it. And I think that's what I take away when I hear and I read Brian, passionately trying to defend the fireplace scene in Attack of the Clones. I think it's one of the worst scenes in all of Star Wars. He brings his perspective to it. I may still disagree, but I am absolutely 100% appreciative of the fact that he took the time and the effort and the energy to try and explain why he's coming at it from the direction he's coming at it from. And I think that's great. And it's that sort of discussion within the community that makes the community stronger. It's not everybody agreeing with everybody. It's not everyone deciding this topic is completely out of bounds. We will never discuss this. This topic is a thing we can't ever bring up because it's guaranteed that we're going to fight. That's not community strengthening. That weakens a community because it says we can't trust you to not actually speak like rational human beings and learn from each other. And that's not how you end up, fostering acceptance. That's not how you end up, building those bridges and making that common ground higher and higher and raising the boats in the rising tide. Like, disagreement is not harassment. It can be, but typically having a different opinion on something doesn't weaken the entirety of the structure that we're all playing in. Disagreement can actually make it stronger so long as we are willing to listen to each other and try to understand why we might disagree and build from that towards a place that we do agree. And that just makes the enjoyment that much stronger. That just makes the community that much stronger. And I think that's a thing that this show does, that Beltway Banthas does, that Blast Points do. They're a newcomer to the podcasting arena, that they've made a very big impact in the short amount of time that they've been around. Like I said, Coffee with Kenobi, God knows there's so many shows out there. And you would think at some point that people would get tired and people would be like, oh no more. But that's not the case. Like every single one of these shows, every single one of these voices is bringing something new and vital and interesting. I know Tashi Station has a spin-off show that is entirely about going through Heir to the Empire, like 3 or 4 chapters at a time with 5 people, 1 or 2 of which have never read the book before.
Wow.
That's fascinating. That's amazing to me. Like, I don't have to go and reread Heir to the Empire and try to put myself in a headspace where, what was it like when I read this for the first time? I can go put on that podcast and listen to people reacting to it because they are going through it the first time and they're bringing their own new insights and new discussions and disagreements are popping off and they are coming to consensuses and building from there. And that just started a couple months ago as well. Like there are always new voices coming to the Star Wars community. And as more movies come out, that community is going to keep growing and more voices are going to be popping up. And it never quite seems overwhelming to me. It always seems like the party has just gotten a little bit better and a little bit more enjoyable. And it's not going to spin out of control. We're not going to get drunk and start vomiting on the carpet. We're just going to keep having fun.
It's like we've opened up the backyard and let more people into the party.
Well, now I know, yeah, and now by letting more people into the party, how do you guys feel about matching the tone of the subject you're covering? Meaning, like some shows use curse words to express a point, or give them that explicit rating in iTunes, and since Star Wars is meant for a PG audience, do you think that the creative content about Star Wars should match that tone? Tyler, what do you think?
I don't think so. I really think it's a case-by-case basis. Okay. I mean, I'm in my own personal life, I'm a very foul-mouthed 20-year-old millennial who uses the F word more than he probably should. And I have no issues with the Star Wars show using foul language every now and then. Now, there's some material that I think doesn't really need to be associated with Star Wars, stuff that's overly sexual in nature, or that's just, I've seen a lot of people saying that they just want really, really hardcore Game of Thrones level violence in the Star Wars universe. I understand the appeal of violence in something like Game of Thrones. With Star Wars, I don't understand it. With podcasting, if somebody is very, very happily discussing Star Wars and they throw in a few swear words and start getting kind of rowdy, as long as it's in a I guess normal's not the word. I'm struggling to come to words about how I feel about it. I don't have an issue if a Star Wars podcast is being slightly more explicit than the source material. I've had conversations with friends of mine that have turned crude in nature that have to do with extremely childish stuff. I had a conversation last week with 4 of my buddies, and we were just hanging around playing video games, and somebody asked a really obscure question about the old television show The Teletubbies, and they were just like, "Hey, this doesn't make any effing sense." And I said, "No, it doesn't." And it was a solid 30 minutes that could have just been a podcast where we started our own Teletubbies show, and it was just us nonsensically talking about stuff. That's my show that I'm talking about, by the way, everybody. That's my tease. I'm revealing it now. It could just be complete nonsense. There's some people. I'm sorry, I just took the show on an awful tangent with that. There's some shows that I've heard that use the explicitness to their benefit, and there's some that take away from it. I think for Skywalking, a show that is very family friendly and that I do enjoy listening to, because a lot of material I take in is just mature, explicit, and has a lot of swearing. It's nice to hear a show that isn't just it's just you guys being yourselves, and you guys aren't the type of people to throw in cuss words for no reason.
Oh, you haven't seen Richard and me driving in L.A.
Oh, that's a whole different story.
That's driving, let's be honest.
If we start a driving podcast, it'll be a totally different show.
Oh, please do it. But yeah, there's a time and a place for it. It really depends. When the Lucasfilm deal went through, when they got sold to Disney, I'm sure there were dozens of Star Wars podcasts where people were just going F yeah, a new Star Wars movie. I think that's appropriate. If somebody dislikes an episode of Rebels, to start saying F that episode of Rebels and starting getting really angry and upset about it, I don't really see how that's going to benefit anything. It doesn't help the person who's getting angry about it. It doesn't help the listener. the listener can easily understand this person is upset when they say, I hated this episode, to throw in a few extra swear words, it doesn't really benefit anything.
If you are doing a show for you and that's just how you happen to talk about Star Wars, I wouldn't want you to try and clean it up for the sake of people that aren't going to be vibing with you regardless. On the other hand, if you are artificially inserting an entire mode of language that you typically don't partake in for the sake of chasing after an audience that probably wasn't going to check you out anyway, like, it's just be true to yourself and be true to who you are. Know who you want to talk to, and know who you are as a communicator, and those sorts of questions are going to shake themselves out in the wash. So far as grown adults talking to other grown adults about Star Wars, I can see that there's a use for every now and again letting an expletive fly. I mean, certainly Rick McCallum did. Like, there are a lot of people who made Star Wars, who make Star Wars now. As a matter of fact, I believe the first thing that Rian Johnson tweeted when he got the job was a quote from The Right Stuff that had an F-bomb in it. So, I mean, there are ways in which adult conversation with profanities can be used in an entertaining, everyday manner that don't seem egregious. But I do think that there is absolutely worth to making your show, if you're considering making a show of listener, and you probably are, I would say roughly 40% of all podcast listeners are also podcasters. But I mean, if you're considering making a show and you are actively keeping your potential audience in mind, I don't think there's anything wrong with you deciding that people who might be turned off by profanity are people you feel like you want to cater to, so you watch your mouth. I am, again, from those Wild West internet days, I'm also an Italian guy. So there's absolutely no way that once I hit 8 years old, I wasn't going to start letting 4-letter words fly. And I am very practiced at the art of profanity. I have a personal sense of pride in my ability to take 4 and 8-letter words and remix them into new, exciting, and shocking things at the right moments in the right time. And
I can vouch for this.
And there are not too many times in which I am talking about Star Wars with a microphone in front of me where that comes into play. So again, it's just a matter of being natural. Be natural. Be who you are. Talk to the audience the way you would talk to any other friend. And Skywalking Through Neverland is a great example of this. The best podcasts are podcasts in which the people doing them treat them as if they are simply conversations that someone else gets an opportunity to listen in on. That's the best way I have found in radio and in podcasting to do that. Because a lot of people will get super nervous at the idea of starting a show because what they envision is like 5,000 or 6,000 people all in a crowd while they are on stage and everyone is staring at them.
Oh, I would love that. I would love that.
No, you should have heard some of our first podcast recordings that we never aired. Oh, they were terrible.
Yeah, but the thought of having a group of 5,000 or 6,000 people watching us doing a podcast, oh, I'm getting excited just thinking about that.
For me, I think it should just, I mean, I definitely see your points, Bobby and Tyler, but for me as a podcast listener, speaking as a listener, when I hear expletives that are there for no other reason than to just be expletives, because that's the way people talk, it actually turns me off of listening to the show. Like, just in general. Like someone was, I remember listening to a podcast, just trying it out, and they were going over The Force Awakens, and they said, oh, and some S happened here, and then this BS happened here, and I don't know, and it was just, they were like describing the plot, but using expletives that didn't need to be there at all, and it just, I like turned it off after 5 minutes. I just couldn't hang with that.
Yeah, there's a lot of people who use expletives in the place of words like or like as pauses, and I'll be honest, I'm one of those people. I'm absolutely one of those people, and I'm working on it. But I there's a lot of people who just, if they just can't think of anything to say, they'll throw in the word to think like, oh, well, at least there's some space. Dead air is fine. Edit it out in post, everybody.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah,
Here.
Yeah, that's one of the best pro tips in podcasting is you don't have to do every single show as if it's live. You can edit it, and you should edit it. And don't treat every show as if you are broadcasting to 5,000 people simultaneously. Treat it as if you are having a conversation with one person, and there is one person listening in that you can't see. It's just that one person is being repeated like 4,000 or 5,000 times.
Right.
Over. It's not a whole bunch of people simultaneously staring at you. It's one person at 3 p.m. It's another person at 3:15. It's someone on their drive home who's going to finish the rest of it on their drive back into work the next day. That's how podcasting works. That's the best way to sort of erase those fears and doubts in your mind, is to just sort of realize that the key to the conversation is actually just having the conversation for the sake of having it. Mm-hmm. But clean it up. You can clean it up. That's the beauty of podcasting. You can shave off all the ums and uhs. You can erase all the weird little nubs and verbal cul-de-sacs that you find yourself lost in. And you can sort of take a really good conversation, make it into something that resembles art, and then just give it to people and let them respond to it. And hopefully it'll resonate with like-minded individuals or people that want to be challenged in the way that they look at Star Wars, and they'll come to appreciate you for it. And even if you weren't specifically trying to chase an audience so you could get advertising dollars and grow your Patreons, even if you weren't doing that, that's going to happen, because when you effectively communicate, when you are being the best possible version of you in a conversation that you can be, podcasters, the audience is going to show up. You are going to make connections with people, and those people are going to share that show, because that's, I think, the real joy of community and the real joy of podcasting is knowing that you can build solely through the power of your own voice and making connections with other Star Wars fans that mean something.
That's awesome. Now, to broaden that out, because I love the way you were taking that. If someone were to come to both of you and say, you know what, I really wanted to produce my own Star Wars podcast, what would you give them as advice?
I think, for one, going in with a plan is important. You need to know what you're talking about. If you just go in and say, I'm just going to talk about Star Wars, it could be incoherent babbling like I've done for the past hour on this show, just talking out loud. If you go into a show saying, I want to talk about Star Wars video games that begin with the letter S for Star Wars, you're going to have subject matter. You can focus and rally around that specific subject. If you go in and you just start saying, Star Wars is really great. I like Star Wars because this, da-da-da-da-da, go on for an hour. All right, tune in next week. I'm going to talk about Star Wars again, and then just has nothing to do with it. And I've listened to some shows that are like that, and eventually they would find their footing, or eventually they would just not, obviously, and those shows aren't shows anymore. But
they've pod faded.
You got to have a plan. You also need to go in, like I mentioned earlier, don't expect that you're going to be the biggest show right away, and don't expect that you're going to be the biggest show at all. If you're constantly worrying about the numbers to the podcast, I really think you're doing it wrong. I don't care who the show is. I don't care how big you are. I don't care if you're doing millions of downloads, thousands, or dozens. If you're going and saying, my goal is to get this big, I really, really think you're just not doing it well. One of my favorite online communities is it's a company called Kinda Funny, and they traditionally do like gaming enthusiast press type of stuff, and they call their community members the best friends, because when all their shows are just them having conversations with each other, talking to each other, and basically saying, you the listener, you know us better than most of our friends do in real life because you've heard us talk about this stuff for years. And that's the case for a lot of people. I've met a lot of the people from that Kinda Funny community who are on the shows, and I'm just like, I know the story about your divorce. I know the story about when your dog died. I know the story about how your little brother teased you growing up. I know you. I'm friends with you. Go into podcasting like Bobby said, imagining that you're having a conversation with somebody who's just, in this point, really quiet because they obviously won't speak back. But eventually, once people do start speaking back and saying, I agreed with you there, I like what you said there, start including that feedback into your show. If you just talk by yourself the whole time, I mean, there's really only so much material that people can talk about like forever without like some input from other people. Mm-hmm. My favorite shows are the ones that have listener mail or listener feedback where somebody says, blah, blah, blah from Nebraska disagreed with me here, or da-da-da-da-da, send in an email. Because those people can have really amazing, fresh perspectives. I did a podcast last week with Steele Saunders. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm. And it was a call-in show where the fans would call in and we would talk to them. And on a post show that we did, somebody came in with some amazing, amazing analysis of Darth Vader and Padme's relationship and what it hypothetically would have been if Padme hadn't died. And when it came to me speaking, I was just blown away. I was like, I don't know what to say because I need to process that. It's amazing what people who don't have shows can talk about. Maybe they're just too shy. Maybe that's part of the reason why you, the listener, is not starting a podcast because you're too shy.
Or it's a lot of work. I mean,
yeah, it's a lot of work, and some people are afraid of being judged. And in that case, you can choose not to take in the feedback. You don't have to look at your Facebook or your messages or your emails, but getting that feedback, you can really grow something great from it. The greatest shows started off with a few people. Those few people really got to know the host and the listeners, and the host got to know those listeners, got to figure out what they liked, and they realized if I keep going with this, I'm going to get more and more listeners, and I can make the community greater. I can cultivate it to points I didn't think was possible. I mean, when you guys started, as an example, what were your expectations for Skywalking Through Neverland when you started? Like, what was the goal? Did you want to be gigantic stars and faces of the world, or did you just want to talk about Star Wars and Disney stuff?
I have been a fan since 1977. Sarah's been a fan since the late 80s during the dark times, and I thought we had such unique perspectives on fandom and on the films, and we were always talking about how our perceptions are different, and we would post things on Facebook, and people would say, wow, tell us more about that. So it was just about sharing experiences, sharing stories, sharing relationships. Sarah and I met because of Star Wars.
Right, and then being creative together, like doing something creative as an outlet. Because
as a husband and wife team.
Yeah, we're both very creative people, and so spending like 4 years on one fan film that's only going to be seen, once just didn't work for us. We had to share constantly.
I didn't even think about viewers or people listening to the show. Yeah. I just thought about, let's just share what we have, and whoever listens.
Yeah, if you go in with the thought, I can't wait to get that Audible sponsorship, you're doing it wrong.
Yeah.
You're absolutely doing it wrong. You need to take a step back and just really think about what you want to do and think, I'm just going to make this show for me. And if nobody likes it, that's fine. Because then at least you have an outlet. And when you upload that show for the first time and you see that other people can download it, you are going to feel accomplished. Even if nobody downloads it, you made something. You creatively worked on something. You talked about something. It's out there. If people don't want to listen, they don't want to listen. And in that case, it's their loss. Because if you put in a lot of effort, it's quality to somebody, even if it's just you.
Right. And what Bobby said at the top of the show, it's something that you keep inside of you and you just can't hold it any longer. And you feel like you're going to pop. That's how I feel every single week. And like Sarah was saying, it's the creative side to us. We love creating. And when people can comment or affect someone in a positive or negative way, that's so much the better. Now, Bobby, what kind of advice would you give to people if they came to you and said, "Hey, I want to start a podcast"?
Sarah actually touched on one of the key aspects. I think Tyler nailed a whole bunch of it. So I'll just sort of expound a little bit on what Sarah just said. Is you better make sure that you have some time because a lot of shows. Here's some helpful critique for a lot of podcasts, and not just Star Wars podcasts. A lot of shows will just record something in one go, and then not go back to it, not cut it up. You can't just yak into a microphone for an hour and a half, and then once everything is finished saving to an MP3 on your laptop, you can't just then up it and call it a day. Like, you do have to put in some extra work on it. You got to plan on what you want to talk about. You have to figure out sort of the motion of conversations in general and teach yourself, because there aren't that many classes about it. It's just sort of a thing that you learn to do by doing, like editing itself. Like, you can go to a school for editing, but the best way to learn the rhythms of conversation, of action, of movement is to just cut you have to keep cutting. And it's the same thing with podcasting. The best way to be a really good podcaster is to just keep podcasting. And I don't mean just consistently uploading episodes, although consistency is a big part of it, but working on what you're doing and trying to make it better with every episode. The next episode is better than the one that came before it. And the one that comes after that is the best sounding you've ever done. And the one that comes after that moves like a freight train, and people won't even realize they've been listening for an hour and 20 when the podcast ends. They'll have thought it was only like a half hour. Like, that dedication is absolutely necessary if you want to make a really good show. You have to set aside the time to work on your craft, to develop the skill, because there are some people who can just speak at length, ad nauseum, with no problem.
Oh, like who?
But there are some people for whom, like, you've got to work at that. You've got to edit that together. You've got to... But there's no wrong way to do it so long as the end product sounds great to you and is what you wanted to share with people. So definitely set aside some time to pursue this with all the energy that it demands, with all the attention to detail that it demands. So yeah, time is absolutely, if you're going to be putting this much effort into sharing yourself with complete and total strangers who can 1-star you on iTunes without a care in the world, if you're going to make yourself that vulnerable, and it does make you vulnerable, then you need to set aside the time to make sure that you are at the least putting the best version of yourself forward.
Wow, Skywalkers, if you are interested in learning how to do a podcast, what you two, Tyler and Bobby, had said is perfect. And put a bow on that. That is like a gift to budding podcasters out there.
Aww. That will wrap up our discussion with Tyler Westhause and Bobby Roberts about the state of Star Wars podcasting, but they will be back to discuss the future of the Star Wars Skywalker saga right after we hear some shoutouts, reveal the Skywalker of the Week, and...
we have some late-breaking news about the Rogue One line in Hollywood from Ric Peralta.
Shoutouts, Skywalker shoutouts. Which Skywalkers get props from here in Neverland? Who has tweeted out? Shout out. Who has photobombed? Shout out. Who has shared a post? Shout out.
We want to give a big shout out to Missy Davis, who posted in our Facebook group, Hey, Richard and Sarah, I loved your last episode. I had my braces put on yesterday, and I listened to your show as a distraction from the pain, and I loved it. Moana is going to be amazing. I enjoyed your coverage of it, and it was good. Neverland on Alderaan. Aw, how awesome is that? You know what's funny about that, what Missy Davis said, is that whenever I'm getting some work done or getting a shot or something, I always think of Luke and Leia's theme in my head. I always close my eyes, meditate, and just think of either Han Solo theme or, Han Solo and the Princess or Luke and Leia, and it just relaxes me and I hardly feel what's going on.
See, I'm the total opposite. When I'm going in for dental work or going to the doctor for any particular reason, the thing that gets me through is I picture Han Solo on that, strapped to that chair in The Empire Strikes Back, as he's being lowered onto that device that's shooting shocks into him. And that screaming he does, it's like I live vicariously through that scene. That gets me through the pain.
Aww.
Unfortunately, that scene is only 25 seconds long. So I've got to loop it in my head. And I don't want to picture Han Solo getting tortured, but just that his screaming is I'm living through that scream.
Right.
All right, now we have another really nice Facebook comment from our friend Adam O'Brien down in Australia. Now, Adam writes, fandom can really help keep you fit. That's what I found when listening to all the podcasts I do on the morning run on the beach. And as a previous podcast, or jogcast, I'd like to say to both Richard Woloski and Sarah Woloski, the job you do putting together these amazing and entertaining shows is brilliant. Also, keeps you focused while on the morning jog. So from us down here in Australia, keep up the amazing work and can't wait to chat to you very soon. And very soon we did. I was on Adam's show, the OzFans Radio Network, and we talked about everything from Rogue One to Catalyst to Planet of the Apes.
Oh, wow.
We ran the gamut. So that show, I believe, is going up I think I saw a post about it going up today.
Oh, nice.
So if you want to hear some fun discussion, head on over to the OzFans Radio Network. Now, with all that said, I think this is a good time to announce the Skywalker of the Week. Could it tie in?
Adam O'Brien.
So thank you very much, Adam, for having me on the show and promoting Skywalking Through Neverland, and for that awesome Facebook message you had sent us about what we do as being so brilliant. I'm not patting myself on the back. I just love it when the Skywalkers really appreciate and notice all the hard work we do for the Skywalkers.
Well, yeah, all the time we put into this, it's like a second job every week, and so we really appreciate it. It gives us warm fuzzies when you guys acknowledge that. It's amazing. So thank you for joining us, and thank you for posting on social media at Skywalking Pod. And also, Skywalkers, if you'd like to join our Facebook group, which is a great place to get to know not only us, but other Skywalkers, then all you have to do is go on Facebook and search for Skywalking Through Neverland Facebook group. It shall populate. And then, once you do that, you can request to join. Now, it is a closed group, so if you've requested to join, just find us somewhere else on social media, like our Facebook page, or someone last week on Twitter said, hey, I put in a request to join the group. So just message us and say, hey, I put in a request to join the group. So if you follow those directions, we will allow you in the group, because we get some odd requests sometimes, and no one, posts a message, hey, I'm trying to join, so we don't let those people in because we don't want any spammers or weird things. So
yeah, and we'd love to see your comments in the Facebook group, and you might just end up being the Skywalker of the Week because of it.
It's true.
And you all know about the Skywalker of the Week, right?
Oh,
it's written by Rob Dellinger,
the John Williams of podcasting,
who's going to be on our show next week to break down Christmas in the Stars. The Star Wars 1980 Christmas album.
Yeah.
Cannot wait for that.
So amazing. And thank you, the Skywalkers here. We're on Periscope. We're posting how they love the Facebook group. And you guys make it what it is. So thank you so much. Now, before we continue our discussion with Bobby Roberts and Tyler Westhause, let's get an update from Ric Peralta of liningup.net with some late-breaking news.
Hey, Rick.
Hey, Woloskis. How you guys doing today?
Oh, we are counting down the minutes to Rogue One.
Counting down until you're ready to line up, right?
And you know what?
Oh, there you go. The circle is now complete.
Exactly, and I was super excited that when Rogue One tickets went on sale, we didn't have to worry about it, because y'all are taking care of all of that.
Yes, that's one of the joys of doing coming along and joining our group. There's no stress.
Yes, at least now.
We take all the stress for you, us organizers. Yes. We handle that stress.
Yes, you do.
And that's much, much appreciated. Now, speaking of liningup.net, you have some late-breaking news, I hear.
Yeah, I've got a couple little things I wanted to throw out to everyone. Get the word out. So we have now confirmed the availability for that meet and greet window that we wanted to get done. The theater's really excited to make it happen. So we are doing a meet and greet on Sunday at 3 p.m. That is the 11th, the Sunday before the line starts. And that's an opportunity for any and all new people and veterans that want to come in and just kind of meet each other. Anybody that's new that wants to find out what it's all about, and you still haven't done your final sign in and kind of confirmed your order, you can meet us, find out what's going on, and just see how cool and kind of diverse our group is.
Awesome.
Right on. Is it something that people need to reserve just to let you know that they're coming, or do they just show up?
Just show up. We're going to meet in the forecourt. It's a nice, easy spot everyone can find. So we'll just be waiting for you there at 3 o'clock. And I expect it'll probably just be an hour or two hangout for us all to get to know each other. And as I mentioned before, we might just very well have a little surprise for one of the newcomers. So it's definitely going to be worth your while to come down if you have never lined up with us before, and just see what maybe you might have a chance at getting.
What about a one-year veteran? What do we get?
You get to share your experience.
We get respect.
There you go. Okay. Come down wearing your line badge and your line shirt and kind of prove that you're one of the vets.
Now, can you give us a sum up of all the details about liningup.net? What's happening on what dates? what the tickets are going for and whatever newcomers need to know.
Yeah, of course. So first and foremost, we still do have some tickets available. So if you are interested at all in doing this, you can still do it. Of course, our Facebook page has the greatest details. It's a fairly long pinned post that explains exactly how the pricing structure works. We did find out actually this week or late last week that there was a small price increase that happened on movie tickets at the TCL Chinese Theater IMAX. You catch that, Richard? So we have adjusted our prices a little bit to coincide with that change, so that we are still ending up with the same donation to the charity. But those that have already paid at the old lower rate, you're in. Don't worry about it. We're grandfathering you. So it will now be $33 per seat, and that will get you your ticket into the theater. That will get you a donation to Starlight Children's Foundation, and they'll also get you a wristband that will allow you to have proof of being part of our group for any of the activities that we have going on, including our pizza party that's happening afterwards. It's going to be provided by the theater. And also it's going to allow you access to the theater 24 hours a day. If you are going to be doing the overnights, you have that access to the restrooms because of having that. Now, if you do want to go that extra mile and get the line badge, which of course is a coveted collectible, and I know how much you care about collectibles, Richard.
Bring them on.
We do have new designs coming out this year. So you still want to get one of those if you can. It's an additional $10 for the badge. And that badge you want to send in to our email, and I'll provide that for you at the end. The email, you want to send in a photo, a headshot essentially of yourself, and also your the name that you want on that badge. If you want any kind of nickname or Twitter handle, and if you have a preference on your spoiler level. Again, as our spoiler levels work in the lines, we have green for everything goes. You're even hunting out the script if you can get it. Blue is official information only, so the magazine articles, the trailers, the posters, and the red means you don't want to know a thing. You might not even know the title of the movie, which would be hard to believe at this point, but there are some that are trying. Wow. So you just indicate that information, and then we will include that for you on that badge you can pick up at the line. Now, because we are doing the line so short this time, I know it sounds crazy to think a 2-day line is a short line, but hey, that's the way we roll. You will want to get this information to us as early as possible so that you can actually have your badge and your shirt in line. Otherwise, you might not get it until, it's well over with, unfortunately. So you do want to get that into us right away. Again, we do still have some tickets available, so you can still do this. And if you do decide to get a shirt, you just want to add an additional 20 to your total, and you will let us know what size shirt you're looking for. We have not placed the order on shirts yet. That is going to be happening within the next couple of days. So you want to let us know as soon as possible so we make sure we have enough for you. And we're going to open this up a little bit. The badges are an important exclusive component for the people that are actually physically in line. But the shirts, I know you guys have seen the design. It's an amazing design that was created for us again this year by line member Brian Lee. He did a great design last year, and he came up with a beautiful one again this year. And we are going to offer those shirts out to the public as supplies last. So if you have an interest in getting one of these shirts, you can also send in that PayPal payment to our email, and we'll get you set up.
Awesome. What is that email?
It is liningupnet@gmail.com.
Nice. Okay.
And the showing that everyone is buying tickets for is for December 15th at 7 o'clock, correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
All right. Now, is there anything going on in the line between December 11th, which is the meetup, and December 15th?
So the actual physical start of the line itself will be the 13th, which is Tuesday at 7 p.m., exactly 48 hours before the movie starts. I'm sure we will have some activities that we don't necessarily want to fully spell out still, because there's always a lot of variables, and I don't want to promise something we can't deliver. But we are definitely going to be having some specific events happening that the theater's involved in. And a couple of things are actually not just for the line itself, but it's inside the theater. We will be doing a costume contest that the theater and IMAX are involved in helping to promote and sponsor. So there will be prizes, and rather significant prizes, going to the best costumes. And then on top of that, we are going to be shooting for, this is late breaking news, by the way. So you can throw in your clacks on here. This is brand new. We just locked it down today. We are going to be shooting for a world record on the largest mannequin challenge. We are going to mannequin challenge the entire theater. And there is a possibility that we might actually have the IMAX cameras themselves filming it. So this is going to be something significant, and it's going to be really cool to be a part of.
And when is this happening?
That's going to be inside the theater right before the movie starts.
Oh, right.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So mannequin challenge is when everyone basically freezes, right?
Exactly. Everyone freezes. You stay stationary as possible. And then the camera will wander through the theater and try to catch all 900 of us in that house. Whether you're part of our group or not, you're in that house, you're going to be part of the challenge. So we are really looking for something that's way off the scales of anything you've seen on YouTube so far.
Wow.
That's incredible. Oh, man.
Yeah, we're pretty excited about that.
I was excited about Rogue One to begin with, but now this.
I know, right?
That is tremendous. And now, from the 13th through the 15th, you're having another big slumber party outside on the forecourt, right?
Absolutely, that's right. And yeah, we will have that line going 24 hours a day for 2 days. There will always be people in line. You can come go as you please, though, because, of course, this time we don't have the minimum hour requirements like we usually do. It's just about the donation. But you do want to be there as early as you can. If you can make it there on Tuesday and be there at least for the first 2 hours of that line, because we will be doing the first raffle pull, because all of the seats are random this time. We'll do that first raffle pull around 9 o'clock on Tuesday night. And basically anyone that shows up on Tuesday will be handed a raffle ticket, and then at 9 o'clock we will pull the names, and you will get to choose your seat location at that very moment, and you will get the tickets in your hand at that very moment.
Wow. And what time again do we need to be there on Tuesday?
So we are shooting for 9 o'clock for the actual raffle pull. You want to get there as early as possible to get in and not worry about showing up just a little bit too late.
Right, because traffic in Hollywood.
Yeah. Hollywood traffic at Christmas, you don't want to be late.
Yeah, no. And that's 9 p.m., correct?
That is correct, because the line is starting at 7 p.m.
Gotcha.
Okay. And we will do that same time on Wednesday for, again, another raffle pull for those that have not already received their tickets. And then on Thursday, we will do it at noon, so that we will have all tickets delivered and in hand well before the doors open.
Okay.
Gotcha.
How
exciting.
exciting.
And for the Skywalkers who are thinking about joining, and Brian Sims is going to be joining us down there. I'm very, very excited about that.
Super excited that Brian is going to be coming up from San Diego for this. I know that a few others, unfortunately, weren't able to arrange. I know Missy being one of them that couldn't make it down, Kai's grandmother, but she'll be around for the next line. She'll plan that one out. I know we're already talking. But we do have people coming from all over the place. I know for sure that we have, again, Paul coming from Jedi News, coming all the way from Scotland. So we do have a nice, diverse group coming in. One of our organizers lives in London, and she'll be out here for it. So it's a chance to meet people from literally every walk of life from all over the world.
If any Skywalkers are going to join us, and if history repeats itself, bring a lot of warm, snuggly clothes.
Yes. More than you think for LA.
Yes, definitely.
And if you have a spare tauntaun, bring it.
It's a windy corridor right there.
Yes, it is. Keep in mind that the winds really pick up around sunset. And even though that's an early hour, it gets really cold really early. And then, of course, you're dealing with the fact that you're sitting on cold concrete and cement, and it's going to be chilly. Just accept it and be prepared for it.
It's true. But you know what? Well, you can't beat the warm people in line. So if Skywalkers, you want to join us, then please, where can we reach out, or where can our Skywalkers reach out to donate or join the line?
Of course. So our official website, liningup.net, has a donate link right at the top. So even if you are not going to be able to physically join us in line, but you still want to support what we're doing, you can donate any amount you might like. I really want to throw out an amazing shout out again to Patty Hammond, your Facebook administrator. She was the first person to donate and not be a line member. And so we were really appreciative of what she did, and we're actually throwing her a little thank you gift. She's going to be getting a very exclusive thing coming her way shortly. She's aware of this, so no big surprises here. But I talked to her the other day, and we're setting something up for her. Really appreciate when people that can't be line members still take that extra step and throw out a donation in our direction. And of course, at the website, you can also find out all the details about actually physically joining the line and what steps are involved and what payments you have to make.
Nice.
Great. And a big Wookiee hug going out to Patty Hammond. Are there going to be any more last-minute announcements coming up between now and the 11th of December?
There's a distinct possibility that there will be. I don't want to promise anything until I know what I can promise, but there is a possibility of one or two other announcements coming that way. And I do, again, want to mention that if you are getting that line badge or you're getting that wristband to be part of our group, that gets you access to the pizza party afterwards. The theater is giving us free pizza and sodas, and we're going to be able to all hang out just like last year and just really hash out what we just saw, talk it all through. I know you guys know, but I'll let everyone else know that, of course, a friend of both Fans Girls Going Rogue and Skywalking, Vanessa Marshall, will be with us again this year. Hardcore fan that she is, she'll be sitting with us. So, and she's talking to her castmates to see if maybe we can get one or two of the others to join us.
Cool.
That's awesome. And of course, we can reveal one more big surprise that Rick doesn't know about, that Eliza will be singing the Life Day song in person. I'm going to start that rumor right now.
Yeah, let's work on that together, because I would love it to happen, but I don't know.
That would be awesome. So tell Eliza to start practicing. So she's either going to reveal the voice of Chopper or sing the Life Day song. It's up to her.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, Rick. Well, thank you very much. And give Eliza and your wife, Lisa, a big hug from us. And we will see you very soon.
Oh, yeah. Actually, sorry, just one last real quick thing I wanted to throw in. We will have a limited number of ADA seats available. So if there's anyone out there that wants to join us but was concerned because of disability concerns, we will have some seats available. So, just let us know when you contact us, and we'll see what we can do to set it up.
Awesome.
All right. Good deal.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, guys. It's always great to
celebrate a day of peace. Come on, Eliza, join in. Is she there? Where is she?
A day of harmony.
And now let's come right back to Bobby Roberts and Tyler Westhause so we can discuss the future of the Star Wars saga. I'd like to jump over to a movie that's coming out in a couple of weeks. A little movie we like to call Rogue One, a Star Wars story. And I wanted to ask you, because at this time last year for The Force Awakens, we were all just bouncing off the walls and couldn't focus on anything else but The Force Awakens. How is your excitement level now for Rogue One? Tyler?
I'm going to start off on I'm probably not on the note you expected. I'm probably at like a 6.
Okay.
And I'll give you a reason why. I think the movie's going to be great. I'm excited to see it. But there's just something about it that isn't catching my hype the same way that The Force Awakens did. And it might be The Force Awakens just took everything I had. And I was so excited for that it's ruined my excitement level for all other movies. And now that I said that, I'm starting to realize there are other movies that I'm more excited for than The Force Awakens. Like I saw the new Kong Skull Island trailer today. That I'm incredibly excited for that. I got chills and goosebumps watching that. I did not get chills and goosebumps watching the Rogue One stuff. I really can't explain why I'm not as excited. I'm a lot more excited for the Han Solo spin-off movie that a lot of people are not very excited for. I'm 10 times as excited for that movie as I am for Rogue One. I'm going to see Rogue One as soon as I can. I'm going to see it a dozen times, but I don't know. Man, I don't know what it is. Do I have a problem?
No, I think I can put my finger on it, but first I want to hear from Bobby.
Yeah.
I'm sort of safely cautious, and I was that way with The Force Awakens too. Although the excitement around that release was absolutely amped up, I think it's going to be hard, just as a matter of fact, to compare Rogue One to The Force Awakens, simply because Rogue One is coming out less than a year after The Force Awakens, which came out 10 years after the last Star Wars movie we got. Be at the time what we thought was the last Star Wars movie ever. So I mean, we were getting something that we never thought we were going to get, and it looked like, I mean, that marketing campaign was so perfectly done. It was yanking emotions out of people that they didn't even know they still had buried within them. And I don't just mean like Star Wars fans. I mean, people in general were watching those things and going, and you know, the
sounds like me.
Yeah. So I mean,
sounds like half my friends in the community.
So I mean, that marketing campaign was doing the Lord's work essentially.
It won several awards as well.
It did.
Yes.
And this year, I mean, not to knock the Rogue One marketing, because I think it's also very good, but it's just coming that soon after The Force Awakens. I mean, Force Awakens was still in second run theaters when the first two trailers for Rogue One came out. You know, I mean, like, that juggernaut had not stopped rolling by the time Rogue One finally started getting underway. So it's a little bit harder to build up the same amount of anticipation. That all being said, anticipation has nothing to do with the quality of the movie. And so whether or not I'm as hyped as The Force Awakens matters not at all to what it is Gareth Edwards and Tony Gilroy and Chris McQuarrie and Chris Weitz and Gary Whitta and Kathleen Kennedy and everyone who had anything to do with getting this movie made. Michael Giacchino. I'm more excited for the score than I am for the movie. I am so excited to hear Michael Giacchino finally get his hands on a Star Wars score, even though he said like there's only going to be like 5% of the score is going to have recognizable Star Wars themes. If you've listened to his Medal of Honor scores, if you've listened to his Call of Duty stuff, you know that is quality music. That is legitimately great symphonic, orchestral, soul-stirring stuff, and that is going to be attached to a Star Wars movie. And just when, if I'm listening to the Medal of Honor soundtrack, and there's stuff that sounds like John Williams' Amazing Stories, and there's stuff that sounds like the soundtrack to Hook, like those emotions are going to get stirred up. And then he's going to drop like the Rebel fanfare on top of it. Then he's going to drop the Death Star motif. Dun, 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 dun. I am going to lose my mind. I'm going to flip out. So I know for a fact I'm going to get at least one or two of those chill-inducing moments in Rogue One just because Michael Giacchino is there. And I think one of the biggest reasons I'm anticipating Rogue One is because it comes out on my birthday. Happy birthday to me.
Absolutely.
Well, yeah. And here's a little birthday song that Sarah and I have for you. This is your birthday song. It isn't very long.
That is, I'm telling you right now, that is one of the 10 greatest podcast moments in my life. I had no
I want to address something real quick. Before we started recording, I mentioned how much I like General Tso's chicken. While I haven't been talking, I've been munching on General Tso's chicken.
Oh no.
That song just surprised me to the point where I nearly choked on a piece of the chicken. So thanks a lot.
My birthday almost killed Tyler. It's terrible.
Well, that would have made podcasting history.
Oh my god!
I want to bounce off something that Bobby actually said, because when you mentioned chill-inducing moments, one thing that there's two things. Three things. I can't make up my mind. Three things I'm incredibly excited for in Rogue One that I'm a lot more excited for than I was in The Force Awakens. I think Forrest Whitaker has potential to give the greatest performance in any Star Wars movie from like the 3 or 4 lines that we've seen from him. I adore Forrest Whitaker to death. And every single time I see him screaming, "Save the dream," I get chills.
Save the cheerleader.
It doesn't matter
Save
if I'm
the world.
Nice Heroes reference in there.
I can't help thinking of that.
If I'm in a theater, or if I'm looking at my phone, or if I work in a store that has a lot of like electronic stuff. Whenever they play the trailer, I walk by, I'm just like, oh, that's so cool. I'm incredibly excited about that. I'm incredibly excited about K2SO. I think he's going to be my favorite, like, part of the new Rebel crew, because I love really sassy, rude droids. They're some of my favorite characters in all of Star Wars. HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic, Proxy from The Force Unleashed.
Chopper.
I love them to death. Chopper, yeah. And then the one other thing is I think Ben Mendelsohn as Krennic is just going to be absolutely incredible.
Oh, yeah.
Everything I've seen from him just looks fantastic. I love, if you haven't seen Bloodline on Netflix, not family friendly, but if you haven't seen Bloodline, you need to go watch Bloodline. It's what won Ben Mendelsohn a Golden Globe. It's absolutely brilliant. He's an incredible actor. There's an absolutely fantastic cast behind Rogue One. It's just, as a whole, it's not getting me crazy excited. I'm going to see Rogue One because it's Star Wars #1. Number 2, 3, and 4 are the reasons I just mentioned. Forrest Whitaker, K2SO, and then Ben Mendelsohn. I think they're just going to be absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I mean, there's not like, it's not like there's no reason to be cautious. I mean, and there was reason to be cautious on The Force Awakens. Like, here's the thing. No one goes into making a movie thinking they're going to make a bad movie. Yet we have all watched a multitude of bad movies. The people behind that movie were trying their best.
Oh, yeah.
And it just turned out that what they made didn't work. That has happened in Star Wars even. I feel, for me, I feel like there are times that George Lucas and company have set out to make a Star Wars movie, and the Star Wars movie they made didn't really work as a movie. That's happened in Star Wars. It's happened in God knows how many other sci-fi series. It's happened in the Alien series. It's happened in Star Trek. It keeps happening in Doctor Who.
Oh, no.
It happens consistently. The longer you let a series go, the more opportunity there is that you're going to end up with very well-meaning people who want to tell a very compelling story, just sort of dropping the ball. That could have happened on The Force Awakens. Luckily, it didn't. It could happen with Rogue One. The jury is still out. I don't think it's unwise to be sort of like, I'll wait and see. But I think, like Tyler just said, the fact that this cast is amazing speaks for it very well. I don't necessarily think the reshoots are a huge problem. What that tells me is that the studio and the filmmakers want to make the movie work. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Like, movies don't come in on their first draft and just get sent straight through to the theater screen. That's not how movie making has ever worked. Empire Strikes Back had extensive reshoots. Star Wars had extensive reshoots.
Every movie has reshoots.
Yeah.
People need to realize that.
Yeah,
they hear the word reshoot and there's like, everybody hates it. It's awful. It's like,
Yeah, no,
I mean, one thing they did in the reshoot was change the hair of Forrest Whitaker.
Yeah.
It's not the end of the world, guys.
Yeah, I mean, there's reasons to be cautious, and there's reasons to not be super hyped up, and I get them, and I understand them, and in some cases, I even agree with them. But I think it's also very, very good to recognize that our anticipation levels, our excitement, isn't going to have anything to do with whether or not they actually made a good movie. And if they did make a good movie, doesn't matter how excited or amped up we were, it's going to work on us. Like, you could walk in completely flat. Like, I don't care one way or the other whether or not this movie is going to be good. If the movie is the goods, you're going to come out of that movie wanting to buy another ticket and head right back in. And that's the important part.
Right.
Tyler had just said that he wasn't quite sure why he wasn't as excited as some people. Now, Bobby, without asking your age, let me ask you, did you see Star Wars in the theater during its first run?
The first time I ever saw Star Wars in a theater was 1984. I watched Return of the Jedi for my birthday. I was born in 1977. It was a very good year.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
I will be turning 39 when Rogue One comes out. So
you're a youngin'. You guys are both youngins. So now let me ask you. I think I am so excited about Rogue One because it hits that very important nostalgia button for me. When I see those stormtroopers up on the screen in a whole new film, or Darth Vader or the Death Star, it just hits all those nostalgic nerves, and I just can't wait to see it because of nostalgia, and it's a Star Wars movie, and because I know Kathleen Kennedy is going to make a fantastic film with Gareth Edwards and the whole cast, and what I've seen in the trailer, just every shot excites me and makes my head explode with anticipation. But I think it's that nostalgia that is really up there when wanting to see. Yeah, it was part of the hype. Now, Bobby, seeing the Star Wars films in the theater, do you feel any of that, and is that part of your excitement?
Honestly, for me, just hearing the sound effects, the music itself, so much of Star Wars for me is atmospheric. It's not even necessarily the story, although the story is obviously very important. But for me, it's a sort of the world building, the atmosphere. Rogue One is going to be, and this is the thing that's really amazing to me. When J.J. Abrams was hired on, I was like, he's going to make the prettiest Star Wars movie there's ever been. I'm like, there's absolutely no doubt J.J. Abrams is going to get Dan Mindell to shoot this thing, and it is going to be candy-coated lusciousness on screen. And I'm like, it's going to be the prettiest Star Wars movie we've ever seen. I was not expecting for Gareth Edwards to top it the very next year, and that's what it looks like has happened. This is going to be an astoundingly gorgeous Star Wars movie. So visually, I'm engaged. There's no way that the people at Skywalker Sound are not mixing down an absolute gem of audio. And Michael Giacchino is on the score. So, I mean, they could just cut the dialogue track out completely, and I have a pretty decent chance of still just sort of, if I want to engage with the film purely on those nostalgic levels like Richard is talking about, I can do it. I could absolutely do it because it looks like they have taken extra steps to ensure that if you decide to marathon these things, and I am way too old to marathon anything. I can't do it anymore. But if you wanted to marathon, it's a young man's game like Tyler. If you wanted to marathon these things, if you wanted to, you could go from Rogue One to Star Wars and it would be seamless. And I appreciate that level of detail. And when I see the trailer in theaters, seeing those images at that size in that environment, it absolutely sort of sends me for a loop. I flash back a little bit. It weirds me out. It's not like when I watched the special editions in 97, and it's not like when I watched the prequels from 99 to 05. It really does bend my mind a little bit. I'm flashing back to that kid in 1984 who the first time he's ever been in a theater was Return of the Jedi. That's weird. That is weird to me, but it's weird in a wonderful way, an amazing way. So yeah, I'm definitely on board with Richard out on that front.
I can say one of my highlights as a kid is seeing Return of the Jedi in the theater, because being born in January, I could never see a Star Wars film in the theater, but Jedi has such a long run, it lasted until February, so I was able to see it on January 16th, 1984, one of the highlights of my whole childhood.
Hey, you saw it a month after I did. Hey.
Oh,
cyber high five.
High five, bro. Yeah.
Yeah, I was born 12 years after that.
Oh.
And Sarah, you were just 3 years old at that point. My future sweetie wife was only 3 years old. Now, have you guys seen the new Entertainment Weekly and read some of the comments that Kathleen Kennedy has been making about the future of Star Wars, and that pretty much everything is going to hinge on Rogue One
and how well it does?
Yeah, at the box office. Now, is that just way too much pressure for one film?
I don't think it's too much pressure. I think it's accurate, but I also think she knows that financially this thing isn't going to tank on that level. Like, even here's the thing that I've been force ghosting onto tons of podcasts this year, at least like 7, I think, at this point, if not more. And one of the things that I've been saying that seems to consistently blow the host's mind is this: Rogue One could make 55%, just barely over half what The Force Awakens made domestically, and it would still clear 500 million and be number 1 for the year.
500 million domestically?
500 million domestically.
Yeah.
And
like The Force Awakens almost made $1 billion in the United States alone by itself, right?
Yes.
Most films are lucky to even sniff 500 million domestically
in a lifetime.
Rogue One could drop about half of what The Force Awakens did, and some people are going to be like, oh man, it only made half what the last movie did. Oh man, it only made like 140 million in its opening weekend. That's 100 million less than Force Awakens did. That's the wrong way to look at it, because Force Awakens was a juggernaut that we're not going to see the likes of in quite a while.
Yeah.
The way to look at it is Rogue One is going to end up almost doubling the previous record holder, The Hobbit, when it comes out. no matter what, it's going to almost double the previous record holder for December opening weekends. So Kathleen Kennedy is like, we'll see what happens when the money comes in as to how viable this is going to be. What she'll see is how much over the line are we actually going to be? Because I can't believe that there isn't anyone in that company that doesn't know they're going to cross the line. They're going to clear 300 easy. They're probably going to clear 400 easy. The question is whether or not they sniff 500. If they sniff 500, they basically have carte blanche to do whatever the hell they want to create their own cinematic universe in the Warner Brothers and Marvel templates. Like they can sort of mix and match and build their own cinematic universe how they see fit. If this thing crosses.
Yeah, Watto spin-off movie. Here we go.
Yeah.
I'm super excited.
What do you know?
Jedi, what do you know?
So really, if it makes 400,
so great.
If it makes 480 million, that is the halfway point of The Force Awakens, and most films won't see that in its first run, DVD, VHS, beta, video games. So it's got a good chance. Now,
yeah, I like how you went down DVD, VHS, then beta.
Laserdisc.
Such a thriving
Laserdisc, yes.
You can't leave out Laserdiscs. I'm podcasting to you now with Laserdiscs mounted on my wall as wall art in the studio.
Aww.
So
if I cut it, it's because I'm adjusting the bunny ears on top of my Skype machine. So.
But I think what she's saying there, I really do think...
I'm just kidding. I was more than bunny ears.
Yeah. I really do think what Kathleen Kennedy is saying there, though, isn't that if this doesn't do well, we're not going to do spinoffs. I think what she's saying is how risky we get to be depends on how much more over 300 million this movie is going to make. Because I honestly, like, if it makes less than 300 million, then they might start questioning things. Right. Then they might start wondering what it is they want this series to be going forward. But if this thing hits 400 and is marching steadily towards 500, it's full speed ahead. Whatever they have planned, whatever it is they're cooking up so far as a Star Wars cinematic universe, they're stepping on that gas. That's what I think that quote means.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Now, she's also saying that they're right now, in January, going to discuss the further continuation on the Star Wars Skywalker films. And they're thinking maybe we should just do standalone films. Should they? I'm thinking maybe do it in the whole Avenger style, where you have standalone films that build up to one Avenger film, more standalone films that build up to one more Star Wars film. How do you feel about that progression? Or do you like the 3 film trilogies, Skywalker or not?
I can't really think of any like Avenger style approach that I would like when it comes to Star Wars. I think Star Wars is too big for something like that. And there's very, very few parts of Star Wars that I think could really cater themselves to more than one film. And I say film specifically. I think there's a lot of aspects of Star Wars that would benefit from like an HBO or a Netflix style miniseries. I think that like on Daredevil on Netflix, it would not work as a movie. It has to be on Netflix. It absolutely has to be after seeing how it works. Something like the Han Solo spinoff movie. I don't want to see a Han Solo spinoff movie too, as excited as I am for that. I'd be happy seeing a like Lando Calrissian spinoff movie, but even after that, I don't need Lando the trilogy. Really, the only trilogy that I think would work, aside from like the Skywalker sagas, because it's the Skywalker saga, obviously, would be if they did something in the vein of like the Old Republic, and it was following a semi-similar story structure to how the 2 Knights of the Old Republic games did. But even that, I think, that's would be far down the line, because that is so like niche. You couldn't even like most Star Wars fans just don't care about that aspect. I don't want to see like Han Solo spinoff movie, and then Princess Leia spinoff movie, and then I don't know. I'm just trying to think. I don't want a Lobot spinoff movie and then have a like Lobot Han Solo Princess Leia team up that takes place in between A New Hope and Empire, or something like that. I'd much rather expand the universe one movie at a time. Do something 50 years after The Force Awakens. Do something 100 years before The Phantom Menace, and then you can fill in the gaps with more material. Because that's a good thing about Star Wars. It's not just movies. It's the TV series. It's the comics. It's the novels. Yes. Give me a novel that takes place in between Rogue One and A New Hope, unless it like ties in exactly so that the final shot of Rogue One is the first shot of A New Hope.
Well,
I'd be happy with a book right there. Give me all that useless, meaningless data. Tell me about like the ship model numbers that they're flying in. I'll read it. Tons of people will read it. I'd much rather they just do like more wild stuff. I know there's a lot of people that want the Obi-Wan movie. I don't know if I would want the Obi-Wan movie before I would want like a movie that just takes place on Kashyyyk that like explores like Wookiee culture or something like that. I want something obscure. I don't want familiar.
I know there's a lot of people that for them Star Wars is the Skywalker saga, and the idea of the Skywalker saga ending is sort of like anathema to them. Like they form their fingers into the shape of a cross and hiss like someone's trying to shine sunlight into their face.
And that's not Star Wars to me. That's one thing that I'm sorry to bounce back in, but I never addressed it earlier. You guys were talking about when I mentioned how I didn't know why I was as excited. I think nostalgia is a big aspect of it because I don't have the same nostalgia for the original trilogy that I think you guys do, and I think the majority of Star Wars fans do, because they were already out and the special editions were like already around by the time that I was born and I was finally starting to recognize the films.
Wow.
They just don't have that same attachment to me. You know what I have nostalgia for? Darth Maul. I have nostalgia for Darth Maul infinitely more than I have nostalgia for Darth Vader. Darth Vader has been a staple as like, I know Darth Vader since I was a little kid. Seeing Darth Vader again it's cool, but it's not as cool as seeing Darth Maul in the Clone Wars was for me. I'd be a lot more excited, honestly. I made the joke about Watto. If Watto shows up in Rogue One, I'm going to lose my mind infinitely more than I would for Darth Vader. Like they saw I saw today that like Jimmy Smits was confirmed for being back as Bail Organa. I'm crazy excited about that. The actress who's playing Mon Mothma played Mon Mothma in Revenge of the Sith. I'm crazy excited about that. It's those little like prequel nods that I'm excited about. But my fandom of Star Wars doesn't hinge on that specifically. Yeah. It's a lot more, I guess, all-encompassing than just the original trilogy. And I know a lot of people only care about the original trilogy.
So wait a minute.
I'm just not one of those people.
I'm just sort of confused now because it sounds like the way that you're speaking is that you do want a whole bunch of spin-off movies.
Yeah, I do. I do want to. Did I say I didn't want spin-off movies?
It seemed like at the beginning of that you were sort of like, I don't want a whole bunch of spin-off movies, and I don't want the spin-off movies to
I apologize.
Okay.
Let me rephrase that. Remember when I said I rambled a lot, ladies and gentlemen? I don't want spin-off movies that tie into one another. Right. I'd much rather have spin-off standalone movies.
Right. Okay.
That can just, I should have clarified. Okay. I want movies that can live on their own and don't need to hinge on the other films. I want a movie where somebody could just watch this movie having never seen a Star Wars movie before and never knowing the other ones exist.
Okay.
The Rogue One, you need to have seen the other Star Wars films and you need to see the other ones to understand like the impact of that. The Han Solo spin-off movie, I'm not sure if you'll need it based on the approach that they're going with it. It sounds like it's going to be like a Western, like maybe buddy movie between Han, Lando, and Chewie.
Yeah.
So what do you?
Yeah.
So what do you think?
I think it could stand on its own.
So what do you think about the idea then that the Skywalker saga could actually end? Like they're considering stopping it at 9.
Well, I don't. I mean, they stopped it at 3 too. I don't think it's ever going to end. But if they stop doing it for another 20 years, I'd be completely fine with that. I mean, I don't need episode 10 to be announced 2 years after episode 9. Because then you're just sort of breaking the formula. Unless they did a prequel to the prequels, and nobody like -3. Nobody wants that. Nobody wants -2, -1. I mean, I don't really. I'm excited about episode 8 more so than I am the Han Solo movie and Rogue One. Yeah, I mean, I'm fine with it ending at 9 as long as it could end at 9. I don't need it to like go all the way to 12. It could go to 12. Do it 15 or 10 years from now.
Right.
Fill in with standalone movies that expand the universe and make it bigger and better than it already is. And if something catches on, a standalone movie that could somehow overshadow the Skywalkers, go with it. Star Wars is big and it's an entire galaxy. You don't need to just focus on this one family for it to be quality. My favorite Star Wars anything is those Knights of the Old Republic video games. And those are extremely niche, and they have nothing to do with the movies besides the fact that they're in Star Wars. I like those more than the movies. And I'm probably in the extreme minority with that my favorite Star Wars anything is not one of the movies.
Well, Sarah, how do you feel about this? Do you want to see the Skywalker family saga movies continue? What do you think?
Okay, my only concern about the Skywalker saga continuing for episodes 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, something like that, is, you know how the books in the 90s kind of exploded? And the stories, like all of a sudden you weren't just following Luke Skywalker, you were following, the kids with the Jedi Academy series, and then you were following their story, and then it just, like, my fear is that you're almost diluting the Skywalker saga by having too many stories and following them through too many generations. That would be my only fear. Unless it all somehow tied back to the fate of the galaxy. But how many times can the fate of the galaxy be in question?
Every film.
Well, I know. That's the thing. So do we want the fate to be questioned that many times?
I'm with Sarah on this, almost specifically for those reasons. Just in general with storytelling, and I understand the role of fandom, and I understand being a fan, and I understand never wanting the party to end, but that ends up almost every time running at cross purposes to the potential of storytelling. In order for a story to have resonance, in order for a story to mean something, there's got to be an ending at some point. Like, you can look at superhero storytelling in the comic books, and so much of the drama in those stories has been completely flattened out and almost debased because its publishers and its editors refuse to let storylines come to a natural conclusion. I think it would be almost damaging to the Skywalker saga if you didn't give it a cap off. That story has to run its course, come to a natural end, and then the people in charge have to be brave enough to say, done. Because, as Tyler said, there's an entire universe. You can stop with the Skywalker stories and pick up another story. Or, and this is the super controversial thing that people cannot stand to hear when I bring it up, but it seems like it's inevitable to me, looking at not only the nature of storytelling, but the nature of the movie industry and the nature of cinematic universes in film and how that is being like the go-to business model. They're gonna reboot it. They are going to reboot it. It'll happen in our lifetime, guys. We're going to live long enough to see Star Wars come to a natural conclusion, even with all these spin-offs that are keeping it alive, exploring different avenues of the galaxy, maybe even launching their own trilogies if they're good enough, if they resonate well enough. They're gonna reboot it. And it's going to happen. And here's what's funny about the spin-offs. They're training the audience to get used to the notion already. You guys are getting used to the idea of a different actress playing Mon Mothma. You guys are getting used to the idea of different actors playing Han Solo and Lando Calrissian. You guys are now even engaging in fan casting who these new versions of characters that you've loved to death for the last 40 years can be. Once they've got you not only accepting, but anticipating the possibility of seeing new people playing familiar characters in new stories, that's over 3/4 of the way towards just going ahead and rebooting it anyway. So I think that after episode 9, they'll pause or flat out stop the Skywalker saga. They'll continue building the universe through these spin-off films, through standalone stories, through maybe even a new story itself that ends up becoming this big grand epic. And then right around the 60th or maybe the 70th anniversary, when all the generations of Star Wars fandom have been built, everyone gets to jump back in all at the same time at square one when they restart the story entirely. And we revisit the Skywalker saga in a new and slightly shifted, slightly remixed, slightly redone version of a story that we're all familiar with, that will go down different tracks and provide new opportunities for storytelling surprises that we hadn't gotten the first time that we went through it. I think that's what's going to happen.
And I agree with you, and I think that's an awesome assessment. Maybe not 30 years from now, but Trisha Barr had once written an article saying that Luke Skywalker must die in order to really progress Star Wars. And I understand now what she's talking about, that you really have to end that story to broaden it out and further it. I would personally, I would like to see episode 10 continue on with the Star Wars Luke Skywalker saga, but maybe not until 2025. Let's give it some distance before we jump back into it. And we can do a whole bunch of standalone films, and these standalones could have sequels. I would just love to see that, and that would really broaden out Star Wars, because Krennic could get his own movie. It doesn't even need to be a character. It can be a situation or a planet, but personally, I'd like to see something like that. So maybe not right around the corner, because I love the wait between Star Wars films. It just builds hype and builds anticipation.
Yes.
So I think
that was one of the most fun parts of The Force Awakens, was the anticipation leading up to it.
Right.
Was so intense.
And I don't want that to get lost, because we're going to see a new film every single year. We can see a new standalone film, but for the whole Skywalker saga, that's a whole different animal.
Right.
And we have so much to look forward to with new movies, new live-action TV shows. Come on, George, or Disney, let's get that going. And even Star Wars Land. Now, with all that said, guys, I can't tell you what an amazing experience we've had tonight on Skywalking Through Neverland. I really want to thank you, Bobby Roberts, and I really want to thank you, Tyler Westhause, for doing everything you've done in the fan community. Now, if people want to reach out to you two, and I'm sure they're going to want to, how can they reach out to you, Bobby?
At Bobby Roberts PDX on Twitter. That's basically the best way. I'm on there. And of course, you could always join Tyler's Star Wars Podcast Alliance on Facebook. I think you just have to type in Star Wars Podcast Alliance into Facebook, and it should auto-populate the group, and then you can click on it and join it. And then Tyler or Minna or Charlie or any one of the fabulous moderators there will allow you to come in, and then you get to find out just how verbose and know-it-all I can be on a Facebook group.
Nice.
All right, Tyler?
Yeah, other than the Star Wars Podcast Alliance, head to Twitter. At T Westhause is my handle. You can follow me there and insult me for babbling, or you can tell me I did a great job at my babbling. I'm happy to talk about anything Star Wars with anybody at any point in time. You could private message me on Facebook. I'd be happy to talk to you about it. If you want to go into the Star Wars Podcast Alliance and just make a thread, calling me out to ask me a question, or calling up Bobby to ask him a question, or Richard. Richard is in there. So is Sarah. Those are really the two best places. You can also go to StarWars.com and check out some of the stuff I've written there. I should have something new coming soon, but I can't talk about it. So there's my other.
Nice.
You tease.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you for having me on, and I'm really glad that you guys saw fit to have us come on and contribute to your wonderful show, because it is a very wonderful show.
That wraps up episode 146 of Skywalking Through Neverland and our countdown to Rogue One.
We want to thank Bobby Roberts,
Tyler Westhause,
Ric Peralta,
and all of you Skywalkers for taking the time out of your schedules and listening to us, even in this busy holiday season.
Now, speaking of the busy holiday season, we can make this busy holiday season that much easier for you Skywalkers by letting you know about the perfect stocking stuffer.
That's right. Rob Dellinger has released our podcast soundtrack of all the jingles he's made over the past almost 3 years, and it is now available on all digital platforms, and it is called Skywalking Through Neverland Awesome Jingle Mix Volume 1. So buy it and help support the show. Help support what Rob does for us, because every week he's working on these jingles, and it's amazing. Also, another stocking stuffer is T-shirts. We have our TeePublic shirts, and I've noticed there's lots of sales going on right now on TeePublic, and we have our BB-8 Christmas in the Stars shirt. We have our BB-8 just Mickey ears shirt. We have our Skywalker of the Week shirt. We have so many T-shirt designs available. So if you want to help support the show that way, all you have to do is go to skywalkingthrough-neverland.com and go to the Support Us tab, and there you'll find links to go to the TeePublic site. It's that easy.
Yeah, and you know what, Skywalkers, what else would you like to see our logo or the BB-8 on the go on? Mugs or notepads.
Yeah, because BB-8 won't be available on Redbubble, but right now we do have a Redbubble shop open. I haven't really advertised it, but you can get the Skywalking Through Neverland logo stuff, including mugs. You can get this thing, but
the banner.
The banner.
We want to. Oh, someone said mouse pads.
Mouse pads. Oh, okay.
Looking to broaden our horizons in the merchandising field.
Yeah.
We want to ask you, Skywalkers and Scopewalkers and Skywalkers, Sky
stickers.
What you would like to see in the future? We got T-shirts. We have the album, and I think at this point we are still the only podcast to have a soundtrack album. So send in your thoughts.
Socks. Send in your thoughts. Tweet at us at SkywalkingPod, or you can even email us, share@skywalkingthroughneverland.com.
Joey Pittman said hats.
Oh, patches. Would you guys like patches? How many of you would like patches? Because we've had a few requests. So we want to know if you are interested in that.
Yeah. Good deal.
Underwear, says Rob Dellinger. Card holder. Nice. Okay, these are good ideas, you guys. Wow. So send them in so we can remember them. Coffee mugs.
Coffee mugs. We don't have coffee mugs just yet.
Yeah, Redbubble does. So I'll have to promote that.
All right.
Okay.
That'll be your task later on. Halloween shirt.
That's right.
We are part of the Retro Zap family, where you can see other great podcasts like Brews and Blasters,
the Deucecast movie show,
Techno Retro Dads,
the Sandcrawler podcast all about Star Wars collecting,
and Talking Apes TV, where on this next episode we're going to be talking to the authors and editors, including John Jackson Miller, about the upcoming Planet of the Apes Tales from the Forbidden Zone. Very excited about that.
Wow.
It's a book all about the vintage Planet of the Apes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
And finally, they're going to have a story about Urko and his helmet.
I hope.
I may have made that part up, but we're going to be talking to the authors today, so we'll ask them about that.
All right. Now, if you haven't already gleaned it from our show, I'm going to go over our social media where you can find us all throughout the week to keep that conversation going. So we are at Skywalking Pod on Twitter, Instagram, Periscope, and Snapchat. We also have our lovely Facebook group full of amazing Skywalkers, and that you can just go to Facebook and search Skywalking Through Neverland, and it should pop up. Request to join, remember, and then send us a message saying you requested.
And always good to get those iTunes reviews, so we want to hear what you Skywalkers and Scopewalkers and
Facewalkers,
what you think of the show, so please send in those reviews. And while you're doing that, always remember
Neverland on Alderaan.
Some imagination, huh?
To our Skywalkers and Tweetwalkers, thanks for listening. Skywalking Through Neverland is created and produced by Richard and Sarah Woloski. Original music by Rob Dellinger. Creative consultant Mark Augushowitz. Technical advisor Peter Heitman. Facebook administrators Donald Wicks, Joey Pittman, and Norma Heitman.
Skywalking Through Neverland is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Any sounds, music, and clips played during this podcast are the property of their copyright holders. All original content is property of Skywalking Through Neverland, all rights reserved. Sorry, had to be said.
All right. Neverland on Alderaan. Take it away, Mickey.
And listen to our extensive bloopers and outtakes coming up next.
Now, if you're joining us, Skywalkers, for the first time, we record our wraparounds, and we've already recorded, usually our interviews of the week.
Our interviews and our segments throughout the week.
Yeah, so we end up, editing all this together. So if you see some down stuff, that's what you're here on Periscope to see, is all the...
Like in the news when they come back to the studio and they do
like
the
when
wraparounds.
They go to commercial.
Yeah. And preface stories. That's what we're doing right now.
Oh no, I'm not prepared. Hold on.
This is where the editing comes in.
Nope, that's not it.
That's Ewan McGregor singing. Got the Moulin Rouge soundtrack happening.
It is. It was totally stuck in my head, so I had to do the Moulin Rouge soundtrack. All right, this is going to take a minute. Give me a second.
This is why we don't do a live podcast.
Yes. Oops. It's 10:47. Good morning.
Nice.
Ewan singing for Beauty and the Beast. I know. I'm so excited. I was just listening to the Moulin Rouge soundtrack. I haven't listened to it in quite a while, and Ewan McGregor, Like, he's just awesome. I so want to see him as Obi-Wan, or in Beauty and the Beast, he's Lumiere, right?
Did you notice how I didn't try to mention the theater?
I did that. Thank you.
The TCL Chinese IMAX.
You should record the name once. That's
You know,
a
I
pain
need
in
to
the
do? Just put a cue card right here in front of me.
Okay.
The theater name shouldn't. When I was growing up, we had the Cleveland Circle Cinema, the Charles Cinema, Newton Corner Cinema. We didn't have a name that was like 15 words and sentences long.
Yeah.
Keep it simple, silly. Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, here we go.
Am I the only one who messes this up on a weekly basis?
That's okay. It's a running joke now.
Oh. Yes, let's go with that. Flashcards, yes.
Okay.
All right, shout outs.
Here we go.
Hold on.
Do it again.
Shout outs.
You have the Nissan Rogue. We have to go test drive the Nissan Rogue.
Oh yeah,
Rogue
sometime
one.
this week we're gonna go test drive with intent to purchase the car.
Yeah. Now, before we continue our discussion with Bobby Roberts and Tyler Westhause, I'm sorry. Wow.
Who's Tyler?
That was a product of wine. Okay, give me a second. Here we go.
Sarah's been drinking.
Now, before we continue our discussion with Bobby Roberts, shut up. Okay.
I couldn't hold that one in. I'm sorry.
All right, that's your fault this time.
All right, take 15.
And always remember,
Neverland on Alderaan. Or the Death Star, because you won't make it out alive. Or something to that effect. and see Rogue One 1,000,000 times in the theater.
All right, there. Oh, look at that. There we go.
As Brian Sims says, the Skywalkers, the best family on Facebook. Aw, well, thank you, Brian.
Aw.
And to your amazing Photoshop skills.
Absolutely.
Me as Krennic is hilarious.
Oh my God.
Did you see?
What did you steal that photo from, Richard's look? Because that was so funny.
Yeah. And did you see the other one he did? Right.
I'm sure I saw all of them.
All
the
right.
one with you guys in the corridor?
No.
Oh.
No, hold on. I gotta show Sarah the Christmas in the Stars album.
Okay.
I'm not sure where it went.
What? Was that in the group?
No, he
should
right
be
here.
you on the Christmas card. I love fan art. I'm sure you meant to say. I love Mark.
Mark, what are you trying to say? Mark, what's going on over there? See, look, this is. You know what? Can we?
Oh my goodness! Here, no,
I'm gonna do this again.
No. Here, let me do.
All
Because
right.
more people
Sorry,
are watching
everyone.
on Periscope.
We want to
look.
Show everyone here.
I gotta scoot. Okay, bye,
See, like,
London.
this
Look at
is
this.
Brian Sims's work.
Look how cute
and look, who's over there? Who is that? And look at this.
It's a hoojin.
It's a little Easter egg.
It's a
Oh, look right
hoojin.
over. I didn't even notice this.
What?
There's me, you hugging Chewbacca.
Aww. And then there's the
Yeah,
Skywalker.
can we-
Yes.
Can we? There we go. See? Look at that.
Yes.
There we go.
Aww.
Yeah. So next week we're going to be looking into this album, and
so
I
cute.
can't wait for that.
Yeah.
All right, and if you haven't already done so, we put up a post on our Facebook group asking you for comments. So if you can give us any comments on what you thought about the Christmas in the Stars album, that would be great to read. All right.
There you go, Facebook. Okay.
There we
Oh my goodness, we're watching ourselves. Okay, well don't watch that now.
I'm sorry. Hold on.
No, stop
I know.
it.
I'm trying to.
It's going away.
No.
Stop it.
I'm just gonna click right out of it. All right.
Yeah,
I clicked out of it.
Yeah, don't. Okay. All right. We're doing the whole Doctor Strange thing again.
All right. Now, gotta come right back again.
There we go. That's better. Ready? All right.
All right, guys. This is the outro.
Here we go.
This is where magic happens.
Rouge one. Okay. That wraps up episode 146 of...
Oh, I'm sorry. I was reading the Scope Walker's messages.
Yes. You were being distracted
Someone said something about
by
red.
them.
I thought there was a red button. And remember, while you're doing that, always set that backwards.
Yes. Perfect.
Okay.
Done?
Done.